Hey everyone, this is What If Fan bringing you another part of What If There Was a Different Luffy. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name in the description below. Please make sure to support the creator. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also, a quick update, the story What If Ichigo Had a Different Zanpakuto is now on hold as we caught up with the author. So once again, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what the next project should be on this channel. I'm currently deciding between these three fanfics. What if sign-in system in High School DxD? What if Ichigo awoke his true powers? What if Mangaka in One Piece world? Please vote in the poll and let me know which story you'd like to see next on the channel. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 401 Kingdom of Prudence 01. Third-person POV. New word. The Kingdom of Prudence is located in a part of the New World, between the beginning and the middle of those waters, a little past Dressrosa. It is also part of the world government. Most of the kingdom was occupied by rural areas, with small villages scattered across the island, and there was a large capital at the center of the country. For Prudence, the economy revolved around all kinds of things, from fishing to agriculture and trade of products exported and imported from other kingdoms. A curious aspect of the kingdom was its strange castle in the middle of the capital, which seemed to take on the appearance of the current king. For as soon as he took the throne, the castle had completely changed, resembling the king himself in his fighting style, with the roof raising two arms with boxing gloves. He was recognized by all inside and outside of Prudence as a powerful and strong man, whose punches could destroy an entire city. Everyone in this kingdom took pride in him. While the king, Elizabello II, was now in his throne room, talking with his ministers, he was seated on his enormous chair, still wearing his boxing gloves and fighter shorts, with a lack of a shirt showing his bare chest, wearing only a cape and a crown on his head, as if he were ready to fight at any moment. My king, we must prepare to leave the kingdom in the coming months. After all, the summit of all the kingdoms that are part of the world government will be gathering at Marigios, murmured his minister. Yes, I am well aware of that, but I don't know why I feel that something is going to happen before that. He murmured, feeling a strange sensation over the past few days. It was a feeling he couldn't deny, some sort of warning, as he sighed and looked out the window, seeing his kingdom in the distance. I know what worries you, my king. The new world is really in turmoil. We don't know what will happen in these waters, and even Prudence could be affected by the conflicts happening everywhere. Not to mention, there are rumors of a great battle brewing in Wano, as we all know, a fight involving three Yonkou that will decide the future of the new world, said the minister, showing open concern. Yes, it's true. Perhaps I'm thinking too much about this and worrying about what could happen to all the kingdoms. Maybe I'm mistaken, and this is just reminding me to demand some solution from the world government. After all, the new world has become more chaotic than in the last 20 years. He responded as they continued to talk. At that moment, above the kingdom, a shadow was flying through the sky, passing through some clouds. The day was sunny, but there were a certain number of clouds in the sky. The large shadow began to reflect the sunlight due to its golden color, as Enel controlled the object flying calmly for the past few days, finally reaching his destination since leaving Black Pearl. Enel's arc was approaching the capital of the Kingdom of Prudence, as they had been ordered to do, with Luffy giving a mission to each of the groups that had scattered throughout the new world. A bit too high up here, Perona murmured, looking down while floating and observing the kingdom with curiosity. You don't even look like someone who's been to Skypiea then. Domino murmured while also gazing down. Let's just get this over with. We need to get back to the master. I'm sure he'll love my new explosive cookies. He'll feel an explosion of flavor. Baby 5 said with a proud tone, while Perona and Domino looked at the woman smoking a cigarette as if she were an idiot. Let's follow the orders then. Domino, wearing a military uniform with the straw hat symbol on her chest, said in a serious tone as she adjusted her glasses. Tisk. Enel had been controlling the arc the whole time, sitting in the middle of the ship, without mingling with the demon women during the entire trip. He ignored them and looked at the kingdom below with his incredible observation haki, observing what was happening below as if he were a god. It seems our target is in the castle, he murmured. What is this? Elizabello too quickly sensed someone observing him with his semi-developed haki, but it was enough to notice eyes spying on him as if he were nothing, which scared him, unable to imagine how arrogant this person must be. Did something happen, my king? The ministers quickly noticed the strange behavior of their king and became concerned. Something is going to happen. He now spoke seriously, rising from his chair and looking out the windows. Meanwhile, the cloud beneath the ark drifted away, and a child playing ball in the middle of the street felt the sunlight shining on him, only for another shadow to quickly block it. He noticed a very strange shape for a cloud, as his eyes looked up with one hand trying to shield his eyes from the sun. But he couldn't see anything other than the bright sunlight. Back on the ark, Baby 5, looking at the miniature city from over 4,000 meters above, took her first steps in her heels and made outfit. Well, anyway, let's finish this. Baby 5 said, simply jumping off the ark and descending towards the ground while flying using Jeppo. Domino shrugged and jumped from the ark right after her, in free fall, while Enel, without saying a word, transformed into lightning, leaving a trail in the air, speeding past them thanks to his Akuma no Mi and heading towards the castle. The only one who remained was Perona, who didn't seem too happy about being left behind with her ghosts. Hey! Damn it, I'm going too. Perona murmured, soon flying after them. The entire capital heard a loud thunderclap in the open sky, with only a few clouds, exploding straight down toward the king's castle. Enel caused an explosion as soon as he hit the ground, watching closely for any movement inside the castle and waiting patiently. The women soon arrived, landing nearby. This immediately alerted everyone inside the castle, and the king looked out the window, seeing 4 individuals standing in front of his castle, with one of them inside a crater from the lightning explosion, calmly looking up at him. Who are they? He murmured, simply jumping out the window, unable to recognize them from that distance as he approached, not that he had much choice. Hey, let's go. The other ministers said, following him down alongside their king. When they got close to the group, one by one they began to recognize them. Who are you? One of the ministers asked, frowning as he observed the group. I know who they are. They're the Straw Hats, the king said, narrowing his eyes. Domino. We're here to negotiate, Domino said. Negotiate? What do you want? The king asked, not liking the situation one bit. Simple. Our captain desires a meeting with you in Dressrosa. He just wants to talk, but he said that even if it's just for a conversation, he still wants to meet you in person. Perona said, turning her face arrogantly. You think you can come to my kingdom and tell me what to do? The king murmured with irritation, clenching his fists. He would never accept that. Well, if you don't agree, we'll have to take you down and drag you by force, inferior being. Enel said in a disdainful tone. How dare you call the king an inferior being, you pirate? One of the ministers shouted, enraged, drawing a sword from his waist. He seemed to be a knight as well. Humph, mortals. Enel murmured and attacked. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning fell from the sky onto the group, catching the king and the others by surprise. Only the king managed to escape, the others were electrocuted. And Elizabello too looked on with anger. Well, let's finish this. We just have to take him down, Enel said, walking toward him. Alright, Baby 5 said as she transformed her arms into weapons. Domino grabbed her whip. Meanwhile, Perona crossed her arms and turned her face away, not wanting to get involved just yet. The king is fighting. Listen, the king is facing pirates who have invaded our country. The palace guards who witnessed everything began to run and shout, while more guards were called. The townspeople, going about their daily tasks, wondered what that lightning strike was and looked fearfully at the king's strange castle, questioning what would happen next. At that moment, explosions erupted in the castle courtyard, catching everyone by surprise, as lightning strikes and blasts occurred, sending debris flying. All of this happened as Baby 5, Domino, and Enel fought against the king, who quickly tried to punch them. He was able to defend himself from Baby 5 and Domino, but Enel was something entirely different for him to handle. Enel simply appeared beside the king and hit him at a speed Elizabello too couldn't properly react to. The king clenched his teeth in anger, trying to regain his balance after being knocked several meters back before standing up again with a frustrated look. The king tightened his fists and punched with great force, causing the ground beneath them to explode, though he refrained from using his full power. This quickly started an intense battle between them, with the castle walls being destroyed. Perona, from a distance, watched with her ghosts. "I'm not getting involved in such a fight. They look like a bunch of idiots," she muttered mockingly. Though the king managed to stay on his feet, he wasn't in good condition. "Fight one-on-one," he exclaimed after a while, as more guards continued to arrive at the scene. Enel then stepped forward. "Very well, mortal. It's time for you to witness the power of a god," he said with an arrogant smile. Baby 5 and Domino didn't argue, knowing all too well about Enel's arrogant nature. "Hey, don't interfere either. Otherwise, we won't be friendly," Domino said, looking at the crowd they could easily overwhelm. "Remember that the captain ordered us not to kill anyone from this kingdom. It must be preserved," Perona said at the end. The crowd looked at each other, unsure of what to do, while their king was about to fight Enel of the Straw Hats. "Come on then, Logia. I'm confident I've developed my armament haki over the last year," the king said as his fists began to turn black, finally able to strike elemental fruits. "Let's begin, mortal. I hope you won't be disappointing either," Enel said in his usual tone as lightning began to manifest around him. In the next moment, the king took the initiative to punch him in midair, while Enel vanished, transforming into lightning and rushing toward the monarch. Chapter 402, Kingdom of Prudence 02. Third-person POV. New word. Boom. A giant explosion expanded throughout the castle courtyard as the battle continued with the sound of lightning and blasts, while the king emerged from the smoke, heavily injured. Enel was floating in the air surrounded by lightning, as if he was dealing with someone too easy to handle. He glared at Enel with anger while struggling to breathe, and all the kingdom's soldiers were slightly terrified at the thought of their king losing the fight. "King Elizabello too is going to lose?" they murmured among themselves, watching the scene cautiously. "We should help him," another said, trying to muster some confidence, though it seemed non-existent. "Yes, you're right, trust in the king, and let's handle the other pirates." They then, even at the cost of their lives, rushed to fight against the kingdom's enemies. "It looks like I'll have to deal with them," Baby 5 muttered, watching the group run as her arms transformed into weapons. "Wait." Perona appeared at that moment, as Enel and the King of Prudence resumed their fight, creating explosions and lightning everywhere. Perona didn't want to interfere, but she knew Baby 5 had a few screws loose and could do something that Luffy had made very clear they shouldn't do, as their captain didn't want any civilians hurt. "Take this." Baby 5 didn't seem to hear her and aimed at everyone. "You unfunny woman, what are you doing?" Perona exclaimed angrily, and just as Baby 5 was about to fire, a ghost passed by her, making a playful sound. In the next moment, Baby 5 was on the ground. "Sorry about that. Maybe I'm not a good servant. I should ask Master to turn me into his doormat, so he can wipe his beautiful boots on me, kicking me with those soles," she said, as Perona dropped to the ground a moment later. "What kind of low self-esteem wish is that?" Perona shouted, her face showing shock with shark-like teeth, even though she already knew Baby 5's ability. This was too much, even for her. "Look, the woman's down, time to defeat her," the soldiers quickly shouted, approaching the area, and Perona returned to her serious expression, floating in the air before Domino could act. "Go, ghosts!" she exclaimed, and hundreds of ghosts began to emerge from her in the next moment, all rushing towards the army of soldiers. In the following moment, they were all hit by them. The sound of thousands of knees hitting the ground echoed as all the men were there, in that position before Perona, who had brought them down without using Conqueror's haki. "Sorry for being born. I am an amoeba. Maybe I should live with ants. At least then, I'd feel welcomed. I should be a tree instead of a soldier. I feel like air. How can I disappear too?" Countless phrases were heard from the crowd. As Perona watched with satisfaction, having brought down all the soldiers, her gaze shifted to the side, and she grimaced in shock. After all, while she held them off, saving everyone from her captain's wrath, Enel and King Elisabello too were still fighting, and at that moment, both were preparing powerful attacks against each other to finish the battle. As they fought, Enel did not have a vision of the future, but now his haki had evolved to the point where he saw an attack that could tear the sky. This immediately left him stunned for a moment, and he quickly distanced himself from the castle, moving to a much higher point where he could gather lightning clouds to face this attack. Meanwhile, the king positioned his arm to the side, beginning to distort the space around him, preparing his super punch. Enel summoned several bolts of lightning as the sky darkened with black clouds, transforming into his giant form made entirely of lightning. He used a power that could destroy the entire capital of this kingdom, and even the king's attack would cause destruction, even though it was aimed at the sky. But he had no choice. He would have to sacrifice part of the city to save the whole place, realizing that the Logia user was getting quite serious. Perona, near the king, was frightened by what she saw, knowing full well that all her efforts to protect the city and its citizens were at risk, something Luffy had made very clear he didn't want to happen. Now they were at the mercy of destruction. She was completely terrified. So you're telling me that the kingdom of Proton's city was destroyed? Luffy's vision passed through Perona's mind as she tried to imagine him hearing that. In the next moment, after hearing it, Luffy would start smacking his fist into his hand with a sadistic grin, before transforming into his hybrid form and beating everyone up, something Perona definitely didn't want to experience. She snapped out of her thoughts and looked angrily at both who were about to unleash these high-magnitude attacks. What are you doing? Stop that immediately. Stop, stop, stop. Perona began shouting in the air, throwing a tantrum, while Baby 5, who was still lying on the ground, watched her. Domino, with a furrowed brow, didn't like the situation either, but neither of them listened to the ghost girl. They continued charging their main attacks, ready to launch in the next moment. I said, stop. She exclaimed again, immediately flying into the air until reaching a certain height in the middle of the city. She spread her arms as her body began to be enveloped by a gray hue, positioning herself between the two attacks. In the next moment, both the king and Enel were surprised by the appearance of a massive ghost over the capital, which emerged from Perona's body as she released her powers. The enormous ghost made sounds like her other ghosts. If people were already scared of the huge lightning forming in the sky and the tremor coming from the castle, seeing a ghost threw them into even more panic. They started running, screaming, trying to flee from it as quickly as possible. Enel and the king, although surprised, didn't stop their attacks, which were almost ready to be launched. Perona, angry at the center of the ghost, clenched her teeth. I said, stop. For the third time, she shouted, moving only two arms inside the ghost in a hand gesture. The giant ghost simply began to swell like a balloon and exploded, and in the next moment, a wind blast spread so fast that no one could react. Even the king and Enel in the sky were hit, along with the entire capital, by this gust of wind. Their attacks stopped immediately. In the next moment, Enel simply began to fall, and the king stopped concentrating his power, dropping to his knees. Enel, still floating and falling, had an unhappy expression. Maybe I was too hasty. I shouldn't be a god. I rushed things. Maybe I should be a fly. He muttered in depression as his aura darkened. I shouldn't be the king of this kingdom. Maybe I should be a fish for the fishermen to catch, at least that way I'd be useful to someone. The king muttered, also kneeling, with the same desolate mood. Even Domino was on the ground, not spared from Perona's attack, while she and Baby 5 remained collapsed side by side. I'm so useless. Maybe I should ask the captain to make me his prisoner. She murmured. But it wasn't limited to just the four of them, Domino and Baby 5, the king of Prudence, and Enel. As the entire city was affected. All the people, of all ages and genders, were kneeling on the ground, exclaiming all kinds of depressing thoughts into the air. Perona sighed. She had brought an entire kingdom to its knees, more or less in depression, but still, she had saved the city. Now, all that was left was to wait for everyone to return to normal. In the next moment, they were inside the castle, while Baby 5 and Domino had already recovered. Enel and the king were still kneeling, as Perona had to use her powers again a short while ago. It was at that moment that they stood up. You bastard, the king said, raising his fist. Come, mortal being! Enel exclaimed before two ghost attacks from each of their bodies sent them falling to their knees again. Can you stop fighting? Perona exclaimed with a grimace, while all the king's ministers and guards could only look at the woman in fear. After all, even though she hadn't created a giant lightning bolt, she was certainly the strongest person there, and no one wanted to experience that feeling again. Even Baby Five and Domino looked at her with some apprehension. Things calmed down a moment later, and the city had become quieter, despite the uncertainty of what could happen now with the arrival of the pirates. Then, Perona took the lead of the entire group. Listen, King of Protons, we are here to deliver this. You just have to go to Dressrosa, as the captain requested. He's not asking for your kingdom, nor your crown, nor anything else. He just wants to talk to you. I hope you at least do that and come with us, understood? Perona exclaimed, impatient, while the king looked at the letter sent by Luffy. Their mission was simply to deliver this letter and bring the king to the captain, who was probably elsewhere now, sailing toward his next objective. However, they caused a commotion with the fight soon after. Fine. The king murmured, looking cautiously at the girl, with little choice, as even the Straw Hat could retaliate if he tried anything against his crewmate. That's great, I'm sure our captain is a man of his word and won't easily be aggressive with you, even if you refuse, Domino said. TSK, you can come, but don't get in the way, Enel mocked, not wanting to fight with someone so troublesome who had such precise aim. Fine, I'll do this at least. But let me make it clear to your captain that I will not hand over my kingdom, he said with determination, while everyone nodded. All right. Now let's go and stop fighting. Perona exclaimed, and everyone, with no choice, began heading back to the golden ship that had landed in the courtyard after Enel returned. Wait, my king, you're leaving just like that? The ministers were worried about Protons without a king. Take care of things while I'm gone. I need to resolve this, and I'll be back soon, he said to them, and his ministers nodded in agreement with the idea. We will be waiting for you then, your majesty, they replied, while the king nodded and boarded the golden ship along with the other Straw Hats as they began to soar into the sky, heading for Dressrosa. Chapter 403, Great Fleet of Yanta Maria. Third-person POV. New word. On the high seas, a very beautiful ship, used by the Tenryubitos, was sailing the sea with its old celestial dragon flag removed. While the new flag was nothing but white cloth. A few kilometers away, on the horizon's edge, there was a line of ships also navigating those waters. One of the men from the main ship looked through a telescope at the distant ship. Captain! He called from the top of the ship. I see a ship in the distance, but too far to see the details. Orlumbus, the leader of the entire fleet, said, trying to look afar, but not managing to see much. The flag is white, Captain. But the ship is very beautiful, seems to belong to a very rich noble. The man spoke while the captain nodded to that. And they are heading towards us? Did they not see our fleet? Orlumbus said, a bit surprised by this possibility. The name of this group of ships was the Great Fleet of Yanta Maria, formed by 53 ships and 4,300 men, as they navigate through the new world pursuing their objectives. They keep coming this way, Captain, the man spoke as he saw the noble ship continuing to approach at high speed without fear, and by this point, they had already been discovered. Who are these? If they really have the guts, let them come and we'll show them the power of the Great Fleet of Yanta Maria if they are here to fight. Orlumbus spoke while continuing to look at the ship. Then, the ship began to approach ever closer to the fleet cutting through the sea, showing no fear or hesitation. The 53 ships stopped to see who it would be after the order of the captain or admiral of this fleet. The ship was occupied by just 4 women, none other than a group that had split after their captain assigned distinct tasks to the groups. This group was Yamato, Nojiko, Bonnie, and Robin, who looked curiously at the fleet as they came close. We finally made it here, Yamato said with a smile after a problem in the middle of the sea. Yes. I thought we would continue lost and would have to return to Dressrosa with the rest of the crew's Vivre card. But thanks to Nojiko who managed to steer the ship. Robin commented as she managed to stabilize it back on the right course, after Luffy handed out the instructions where the great fleet of Yanta Maria would be following information he collected with the Baroque works and other organizations in the New World. Nojiko didn't just listen to her sister her whole life. She might not have Nami's talent, but that didn't stop her from learning a few things about navigation. Now their ship finally reached the fleet. So many people. Are we going to fight all of them? Bonnie murmured, looking at the 53 ships. Well, our captain asked to talk to them. If it doesn't work out. Robin commented before opening a smile. Then we'll have to invite them by force. Robin commented. It looks like there's no way around it. Let's go, let's talk to them. Yamato said in the end, approaching the edge of the ship. She saw a large man with long blonde hair and beards approaching wearing characteristic pirate clothes in red and gold, observing them with curiosity, while his men stayed behind him. Identify yourselves and state your intentions, he said. After all, it was just one ship approaching all of his, so he didn't immediately give the order to open fire, first wanting to know what their intentions were. Captain. Someone there immediately called his man with quite a scared face. That woman with white hair is Kaido's daughter, the Straw Hat's wife, and with a bounty of 1.8 billion. He exclaimed among the men, pointing to Yamato, while scaring everyone hearing this. It was not surprising seeing everyone there, being surprised and quite shaken. Even the captain looked surprised, frowning. The other two women. They are all members of the Straw Hats, Captain. What shall we do? The men exclaimed while the world still had not recognized Bonnie as a member of the crew. Orlumbus still tried to reason, after all, they were not attacking them immediately. State exactly what you want? He said. It was Nojiko who took the initiative for the conversation, being the most prepared for something diplomatic. We are here by order of our captain to look for you, she began. And what does your captain want with us? Orlumbus murmured, not very fond of the situation. Luffy wants to summon you to Dressrosa. He wants to invite you to join the Straw Hat Fleet after talking with him, Nojiko explained. Join the Straw Hat Fleet? The men of the fleet looked surprised to hear this, while they looked at the captain, waiting for his response. This can't be, it must be some kind of joke. Why would we join your crew? We have our own group and you are about to go to war against two Yonkou. Do you want to use my ships and my men? Are you desperate? Orlumbus burst out indignantly. It was Yamato who spoke this time. We don't want to treat you as cannon fodder in the upcoming war. Luffy does not intend to put any newly recruited members in this war, but he wants to start strengthening everyone. All we ask is that you go to Dressrosa and talk with the captain. He is very interested in you and just wants to talk. She made it clear. The captain was thoughtful about this, while the members of his crew waited anxiously for the response, knowing they could end up fighting right there with a woman worth almost 2 billion. Finally, he looked at the group and said, All right. I will talk to your captain in Dressrosa. Orlumbus spoke, surprising some who expected him to disagree. If it's just a talk, I have no problem, but I will not join your crew or fleet by force, he completed with a stern tone. Great. I'm sure he will respect your decision as long as you at least talk to him, Nojiko said, and Orlumbus nodded. Well, these things were resolved quite quickly. Fufufu, Robin commented, laughing. Yes, that was quite simple, Bonnie murmured, impressed with the speed of the negotiations. Let's head back, then. We were just supposed to deliver the message. We hope to meet you again in Dressrosa, Yamato said quickly. Bonnie, can you take the helm and turn the ship? Nojiko asked as Bonnie nodded and went to it, beginning to turn the ship and heading to another side, opting not to accompany the fleet as their ship would be faster and the ship of the Tenryubito that Luffy had killed at the end of East Blue began to move away. Captain, a man approached Orlumbus, still curious about him having accepted the proposal so easily. I know you are wondering, but look at that group. They have a woman who is the daughter of that monster. What could we do? It was either this or our destruction, Orlumbus finally said, recognizing that he couldn't fight against Kaido's daughter and, even more, that there were others there, less powerful than Yamato but equally dangerous. All had quite impressive bounties a year ago and he didn't know if they had become even stronger, which made him even more worried about a possible fight. "I understand, and what will we do now, Captain?" the man insisted. "Well, we have no choice. Let's organize our fleet and head for Dressrosa. Get ready, everyone!" Orlumbus exclaimed, fulfilling his word. Quickly, his men began to move, preparing to meet the man most talked about in the world currently. Meanwhile, the noble's ship continued sailing through the seas, and it wasn't long before other ships appeared on the horizon. Nojiko looked to the side, narrowing her eyes. "I sense ill intentions coming from that side. It seems that this ship intends to attack us," Yamato said, seeing that they were approaching more and more. "It seems there are pirates, bounty hunters, and criminals approaching," Robin said after putting an eye to see the ship in the distance. "They think we are a commercial ship," she completed, warning the rest of the crew. "Ah, look at the noble ship unprotected. Just as our informants had said they saw it in these waters. This will be a good profit," one of the pirates celebrated, believing they had found an easy target. More and more ships began to appear. There were 6 ships believing they had found easy prey to ambush. "Well, they don't seem very strong," Yamato commented, placing her hand at the height of the ship. "Hey, Robin, shall we handle this together?" she asked. Robin nodded, as Yamato grabbed her weapon, already close to the other ships. They looked somewhat surprised to see a woman appear at the front on the bow. Yamato gave a brief glance as she raised and swung her club, releasing a cold energy into the sea. The next moment, the surface of the sea began to freeze, advancing quickly towards the ships, leaving everyone surprised as their ships stopped, trapped in the ice. "Hey, what is this?" "They froze the sea," the pirates exclaimed, stunned to see such a bizarre scene. And it didn't stop there. Robin, wanting to quickly end the situation, began to create several hands on the surface of the ice. The hands were much larger than normal, about 2 meters tall, and the next moment, hundreds of them emerged in front of the noble ship and, forming a shape of a gun, began firing, crushing the ships the next moment. The pirates could only watch, unable to do anything. Their ships began to explode and disintegrate, while the ice destroyed everything in its path, with such force that all the debris was sent to the bottom of the sea. "Well, that was simple. Let's continue," Nojiko spoke with a bored expression, while Bonnie continued to control the helm. "We're going to take days like this. Is there a way to go faster?" "Nojiko?" Yamato asked while looking at the girl. "Yes." Nojiko murmured as she began to move towards the back of the ship, looking at Bonnie. "Just steer the ship to the right side," she requested. "Wait, you're going to do that?" "I'm going to get lost," Bonnie exclaimed quite insecurely. "Don't worry, trust in yourself," Nojiko simply spoke and went to the back of the ship before tying a belt prepared by her. She adjusted the belt to hold the ship and pointed her hands forward towards the sea. Bonnie, being the closest, could do nothing but put earplugs in her ears and prepare to control the helm. The next moment, with her palms open, she began to generate explosions, making her body go backwards while she continued firing and firing. The next moment, with the explosions, the ship began to advance at high speed forward, and it quickly moved against the horizon, no longer appearing as a sail-driven ship that depended on the wind. And thus, they set off, returning to Dressrosa with their simple mission completed. Chapter 404: Ichigo's Pirates. Third-person POV. New word. "How is he?" the feminine voice asked with some anxious tone, looking at Chopper, who was now keeping his stethoscope in his ear while placing the sound amplification part on the woman's belly. "Yorin Luffy's child is doing very well. He's developing, and he seems to be a healthy boy," Chopper said, looking excited about it as well, since he had also helped take care of Luffy's other children. "How much time do I have until our boy is born?" Yuta asked. "In 6 months, you will give birth to him," Chopper said with a small smile. "Well, that's great," she murmured, happy to know that. She already knew it was a boy, with Luffy being able to see it through his observation haki, ever since he sensed a part of him growing inside her womb. Everything seemed fine until they started hearing explosions outside, making the room shake a little. The ship they were on at the moment was the noble ship from the Goa Kingdom that Luffy had stolen. They had found the ship in the middle of the sea, and it was the crew they had been searching for after Luffy's instructions. But as Yuta was already having a checkup to see how her pregnancy was progressing, they stayed put. It seems things didn't go as planned. Chopper commented. Let's go outside and see what happened. Yuta said as she left, covering her belly again with her dress, while Chopper also packed up his medical equipment. The two left the medical room and headed to the deck. It didn't take long for them to witness the scene outside where their ship was docked next to another one flying a Jolly Roger. On this pirate ship, there were a bunch of people lying on the ground, most of them looking grilled after being burned by Reiju's attacks, who was also present. It looks like things escalated to this point. Usopp commented, looking at all the bodies lying on the ground, while he and Reiju were the only ones standing and perfectly fine. As soon as they reached the ship, they had no flags, and Ichigo's pirates thought it was a merchant or noble ship, but it was strange as it didn't bear any insignia on its completely white sail. Usopp introduced himself as a member of the Straw Hat crew, delivering the message of his captain's invitation, inviting them to Dressrosa. This immediately made the crew of the ship scoff at the invitation. After all, they didn't want to be ordered around by anyone, let alone have to go to a Yonko because he was asking them to come to Dressrosa. But since it was mandatory from Luffy to at least have them in his newly conquered territory, they engaged in battle. Luffy wouldn't force them, but he wanted to talk to everyone, even if it meant forcing them to at least meet him. After all, they were potential members of his future fleet. He had decreed that each group of his crew would hunt down each of the crews that had originally become Monkey D. Luffy's fleet, because it would add another level of power to his current strength while allowing him to control the seas. After all, he couldn't be everywhere at the same time. His fleet and power were much greater than the original Straw Hats. So, hunting them down one by one, he sent each group of his crew to search for them. This group, formed by Usopp, Chopper, Yuta, and Reiju, was tasked with finding two pirate groups. The first was the one before them, the pirates led by the captain of the Long-Arm tribe, Ichigo. But his crew wasn't made up solely of his tribe, known for their exceptionally long arms, as it was a mix of various other members, even including one from the Long Lake tribe, with the rest being ordinary humans. It was an impressive crew, with some members standing out among them, even though they didn't show much power right now, having been defeated by Usopp and Reiju. But they were still brave enough to fight. Everything was silent at that moment before Chopper sighed. I think we overdid it. Hey Chopper, can you help us? Everyone's a little hurt. Usopp said. A little hurt? Chopper exclaimed, making a face from the other ship. Don't worry about that. Reiju said as she stepped on the floor, starting to generate flames all over the ship without burning its hull, while helping to regenerate all the members of Ichigo's pirates. Well, I guess that's pretty useful. Usopp murmured. Now let's wait for them to wake up. After that, they ended up returning to their current ship, while Reiju went to the kitchen to prepare something, coming back with a tray of some treats and fruit. While Chopper and Usopp were playing cards in the middle of the deck, Yuta sat at a distance by herself, feeling a bit of the sea breeze touch her belly as she hummed a melody. Reiju then approached her. Food? But that didn't stop Usopp from exclaiming as he looked at the delicious dessert Reiju had prepared. This isn't for you, but for our future mother. She needs to feed her child. Reiju said in a neutral tone as she passed by them, while Chopper could only look longingly at the pudding being taken to Yuta. She approached the pregnant woman and offered the tray. Here, she said. Yuta looked at her, smiling as she took the food. Thank you. Yuta said. It's nothing. You need to eat and take care of that child growing inside you. Reiju stated with a small smile. And you, don't you plan on having one too? Yuta asked curiously, eating the pudding with desire, while looking at the cook who was part of her husband's harem. I took that herb, like most of the women who share a bed with Luffy. Reiju replied, as she didn't plan to have children and used a natural contraceptive herb that the people of Skypiea had to prevent pregnancy. She didn't want the responsibility right now, and she, along with most of the women, chose to use the herb due to all the confusion and turmoil they were about to face at sea. But that doesn't mean I don't want to be a mother. She continued. Maybe I'd like to have a few brats. Reiju couldn't help but smile as she looked toward the horizon. But I want everything to calm down first. She didn't want to give her children the same kind of childhood she had, not that Luffy would ever be like her father. She would never believe that, but it had left her a bit traumatized, and she didn't even want to imagine the possibility of her children experiencing the kind of life she and Sanji had in Germa 66. I'm sure Luffy wouldn't mind having a bunch of kids. Yuta responded with a smile. Reiju nodded and began to leave, before returning to the kitchen and later coming out again with food for Usopp and Chopper, the latter being quite excited to have pudding to eat as well. On the pirate ship, one of them finally stirred. Huh, what happened? Ichigo finally woke up with a huge headache, surrounded by the fallen bodies of his comrades, all defeated. He began to remember what had happened when some of the Straw Hats came to his ship, giving some orders, which he mocked, and they ended up in a conflict, only to be miserably defeated. Damn, they're monsters. Ichigo thought as his gaze fell to the side, where the noble ship still stood. At that moment, someone already aware of his awakening jumped from one ship to the other, and Ichigo saw that arrogant long-nosed man appear in front of him. I see you're awake, Usopp said with an arrogant smile. You bastard. Ichigo growled. As I said before, you have two choices: 1, talk to Luffy and Dressrosa, or 2, get beaten until you agree with the first option, Usopp said with a malicious grin, nothing like the boy who left Syrup Village almost 2 years ago. You think I'll agree to this just because your captain is an emperor? You're not the first emperor who's tried to convince us, Ichigo said with determination. In the next moment, he was slapped on the head, causing him to fall to the ground without having time to react. He felt his world spinning, frustrated, before getting back up. His long arms hung by his sides as he looked at Usopp, frustrated and even a bit fearful. Come on, man, this won't help at all. I don't think he's going to force you into our fleet if you really don't want to join, but he still wants you to at least go and talk to him. I know you can at least do that. Usopp said, and Ichigo just had a frustrated look. When his gaze fell on his fallen crewmates, all defeated, he clenched his fists before turning back to the young man. All right. He admitted, realizing he had no choice. I'll talk to your captain then. At least have a conversation like he wants. Great, we'll wait for your crew to wake up before moving on, Usopp said. In the end, instead of going to Dressrosa alone like the Yanta Maria Grand Fleet, the noble ship was followed by Ichigo's pirate ship, as they sailed towards a special place. So, are we heading for the second pirate group we're hunting? This Cavendish? Chopper asked, holding a wanted poster of the second target of their group, showing it to everyone. Yes, this is Cavendish, one of the supernovas from 2 years ago. He was prominent until the worst generation emerged. It seems he's quite arrogant, and as Luffy warned and made clear, he's also hostile to the members of the worst generation, which includes 2 of us on this ship. Usopp said, glancing at Reiju, since both of them were pirates considered supernovas with bounties over 100 million berries. Alright then, let's head there, Reiju said in the end, and the ship continued sailing in that direction. In a village on an island a few dozen kilometers away, there was a man showing off while several women gazed at him with hearts in their eyes. He wore a hat and held a flower in his mouth, trying to appear gallant. Many women seemed to be enchanted by his every move. But in the midst of this, no one noticed when suddenly, his face changed. He began to smile strangely, as if he were about to act with a much more deadly personality than his current one. Chapter 405, Beautiful Pirates. Third-person POV. New word. In Dorina Kingdom, in a coastal city far from the capital, where there were at least 50,000 inhabitants, an event caught attention as a blond man stood out to everyone, displaying himself in an unusual way for all there. Cavendish easily drew attention from people, especially the women, as he enjoyed showing off. Cavendish. The women screamed like his very own fan club. Hello, my ladies, what luck that I'm here for you on this beautiful day. I hope you're all doing great. He said, winking. Ah! The women exclaimed, hearts in their eyes as they gazed at him with excited expressions. I'm glad you're here because I can share a bit of my great pirate adventures. He exclaimed, striking a pose. Please, tell us about your adventures. The crowd kept shouting while, a little distance away, a group of people watched with slightly bored expressions. That guy's a pirate who showed up a few years ago, looks like he's quite the show-off. One man murmured to another. Who cares, as long as he doesn't cause trouble for our village, I don't mind him. After all, there are pirates we should worry about more right now. His friend said in a calm tone. Ah yes, today's paper reported a sighting of Monkey D. Luffy near the Red Line. He invaded the Golden City, Grand Tesoro, and caused some trouble there. He said, showing today's newspaper. At the start of the Grand Line. As long as he doesn't show up here, it's fine. I wouldn't want to run into a man like him in this kingdom. The other murmured. Yes, he's probably heading to Dressrosa, there's no reason for him to come here, right? Another from the group expressed concern. At that moment, one of them noticed the crowd cheering for the recently arrived pirate, and saw Cavendish staring directly at them, his eyes gleaming crimson. Why is he looking at us like that? The people asked, slightly startled. Before anyone could speak again, suddenly, Cavendish vanished from his podium in the square and reappeared in front of the men, leaving them stunned and unable to react. What did you say? Cavendish exclaimed with a furious look, grabbing the man with the newspaper as everyone there grimaced at him. What are you doing? Despite the previous boredom, the man couldn't help but feel fear before this pirate with a bounty of 280 million berries. Tell me, you were afraid that Monkey D. Luffy might appear here, but you weren't afraid of me? Cavendish was upset. He could have been in the middle of his adoring crowd, but his ears quickly picked up someone saying he wasn't as important. As someone as narcissistic as him, he could never accept something like that. Well, after all, he's a Yonko. The man admitted, stating the obvious. I don't give a damn if he's a Yonko. I am Cavendish, do you hear me? Cavendish. He continued exclaiming, causing the man's grimace to deepen. Why yes. The man shouted as Cavendish already had his sword at his neck, losing all his former aura of glory while the crowd, mainly consisting of women, looked at him in slight confusion. Then say it. Who's better, me or Monkey D. Luffy? He asked in a dangerous tone. It's you. Please, leave me alone. The man exclaimed, and Cavendish's aura shifted immediately as he smiled with stars appearing around him. That's great to hear, so you're my fan. You may go. Cavendish said in an excited tone as the man collapsed to the ground, staring at him in fear before running away, while no one else wanted to be around that slightly lunatic man anymore. Ha ha ha. Well, my ladies, where were we? Let's get back to me telling a story about my great adventures. Excuse me, are you Cavendish? A soft voice appeared next to Cavendish with light footsteps, catching his attention. A fan? Cavendish said with a smile, turning his head, but in the next moment, he froze. After all, there was a reindeer in front of him, one he knew very well. Memories of the days when he was in his glory flashed before him, days that suddenly crumbled with the rise of the worst generation. His fans quickly began to forget him, paying attention to everything the new supernovas did in every piece of news. But the worst of all, by far, were the Straw Hats, who had captured the world's attention, something Cavendish had always dreamed of. No. I came looking for you. Chopper said in a happy tone while holding a cotton candy he had bought before arriving at the square. How cute. The crowd quickly turned their attention to Chopper, their expressions shifting from Cavendish to Chopper as he became the center of their admiration. Cavendish was speechless, watching his crowd switch sides, as all the women ran to Chopper at that moment. Chopper was also surprised as he was lifted up by the group of women, leaving Cavendish behind, who could only watch with stunned eyes as he was replaced. Hey, what are you doing? Chopper exclaimed, trying to protect his cotton candy so it wouldn't get knocked down as the women grabbed him. You're so cute, what's your name? They asked. Can I take you home? I'd love to sleep with a teddy bear like you. The women continued, pinching Chopper's cheeks and fur while he struggled to free himself from the tight grips. Who are you calling cute, you idiots? Chopper exclaimed, frowning at them all, though he seemed rather pleased with the compliments. Beside them, suddenly, Cavendish knelt down, being ignored by the entire crowd. Why am I being ignored? All my fans replaced me with a reindeer who just arrived. Why can't anyone see the splendor and magnificence that is me?" he muttered in a tearful tone. Meanwhile, Usopp also appeared at that moment. "Hey, Chopper, what are you doing?" he exclaimed, approaching. "Hey, that's a Straw Hat. It's the sniper who fought in the war." There was a murmur as soon as they saw Usopp approaching. "He's incredibly powerful. I heard he destroyed part of Marineford while transforming into a huge dragon." The women clamored as they saw Usopp approaching. Usopp was surprised as the city's women grabbed him. "Tell me some of your adventures, mighty pirate?" they quickly asked. He was a little lost. Cavendish looked at Usopp with even more rage, losing more fans while he was being ignored. Chopper seemed thrilled and started narrating some of his tall tales under the admiring gaze of the other women. "Damn Straw Hat pirates!" Usopp was interrupted as he looked surprised, being confronted by the man he and Chopper were looking for. Cavendish had drawn his sword and was now pointing it at Usopp. Usopp looked stunned as he was still being held by both arms by the women of the city, recounting some of his adventures. "I challenge you, pirate!" Cavendish exclaimed. "My honor is at stake. Face me!" he shouted, raising his sword toward the Straw Hat sniper. "Well, alright then, I accept your challenge," Usopp said, still a bit wary, preparing to fight him if he was being challenged like that, while moving away from the women. "Very well, then prepare yourself. You will feel the power of this star," Cavendish shouted. In the next moment, he jumped to attack Usopp, but Usopp simply disappeared, reappearing behind him. Before Cavendish could react, his body began to lose balance, and he fell to the ground. The entire area went silent. After all, everyone expected a grand fight, not something so one-sided. To everyone, it seemed Usopp had defeated him with ease. So this is the power of the Straw Hats, the people murmured. But Usopp raised an eyebrow at the fallen man. He hadn't used much power, yet Cavendish was lying on the ground, snoring. This narcissistic pirate had fallen asleep in the middle of the fight and had dodged Usopp's attack effortlessly. "Wait a minute, did he fall asleep?" the people asked, now noticing the huge bubble growing from his nose. Even Chopper approached. "I'm a doctor, I should check if he's okay, let's see if something's wrong." He started to move closer while still munching on his cotton candy, no longer bothered by the women. But in the next moment, Cavendish's expression began to change. His face twisted into something rather sinister. "Hey, Chopper, be careful!" Usopp quickly sensed the change and yelled at his crewmate. Chopper looked surprised as he saw Cavendish suddenly get up with that twisted face and attack with his sword. With quick reflexes, Chopper jumped back, dodging the strike. His cotton candy was sliced in half, leaving Chopper in shock. "My cotton candy!" he murmured as the man, or whatever he was now, disappeared again, abandoning his attack on Chopper and searching for another victim. Chopper began to cry after that. Cavendish, now in an unknown transformation, started sprinting around, cutting down anything in his path. "Hey, what's going on?" Usopp exclaimed as Cavendish moved at high speed across the square. Usopp saw him running out of the square and quickly sprouted wings on his back, trying to stop the lunatic in a state he no longer recognized, cutting down anyone he saw. Meanwhile, Reiju and Yuta, who were buying some fish and other seafood, one of them cooking while the other had a craving for something special, heard the commotion and the screams coming from the middle of the city. "What's happening now?" Yuta murmured, while Reiju, smoking a cigarette, looked at the situation. Suddenly, something charged through the streets, with people running in the opposite direction. That thing appeared at the beginning of their street, cutting through houses and people rapidly. Until the creature, with a macabre smile, saw Reiju and Yuta and charged at them at full speed. Reiju saw it and didn't like at all the sight of that thing lunging at her, but Cavendish, in his transformed state, barely had time to react when her kick hit him with such speed that he was sent flying, crashing through an entire building from the impact of her strike. "Who is this maniac?" Reiju murmured, taking the cigarette out of her mouth to blow the smoke before taking another drag, while Yuta approached her side. That guy. He's cutting down everyone, Yuta said, looking at the streets. At that moment, Usopp appeared, flying with his wings. Did you get him? He asked as he approached Reiju. I buried him in that building, Reiju commented. Suddenly, an explosion occurred there, and Cavendish came sprinting out, rushing to attack more people on the other side. That bastard. We have to stop him. Usopp muttered. He flapped his wings, flying toward Cavendish again. He had to be careful not to destroy more of the city with one of his attacks and knew he had to act differently. Back in the square, Cavendish continued his rampage, cutting down more people. Chopper was there, crying with his cotton candy on the ground. After losing sight of it, Chopper focused on the lunatic running around, slashing at everything that moved in front of him, regardless of the people's screams. Chopper, enraged, replaced his tears with a furious glare. Cavendish saw him and charged at him as well. As he advanced toward the Straw Hat member, Chopper's body began to grow. Even without his rumble ball, he had learned to reach all the stages of his transformation. A moment later, he was so large that he stood out across the city, towering over every building. It happened so fast that Cavendish couldn't react, he only saw the shadow blocking out the entire sky in front of him. Before he could understand what was happening, a massive hand slammed him into the ground, shaking the entire square and destroying part of it. Usopp arrived at that moment. Well, looks like you got him. He looked at Chopper's giant hand, leaving a crater in the square. The enormous Chopper nodded as he began to shrink, returning to his normal size. Still with a few tears in his eyes, he murmured, yes, thinking about his lost cotton candy. Now we need to clean up this mess. Don't worry, we'll get you another cotton candy, Usopp said, trying to comfort him. In the end, there were many injured and defeated people scattered across the city. At that moment, the two women arrived, with Yuta approaching, holding a cotton candy. Here, she said, as she had bought one for herself, but seeing Chopper in that state, she decided to give it to him. Chopper nodded excitedly. Thank you. His gaze finally shifted to his surroundings, seeing the fallen bodies. Someone call a doctor, he exclaimed desperately. I'll take care of that, Reiju said, quickly starting to release her regenerative flames through the streets where Cavendish had wreaked havoc. Well, there's nothing left for us to do here. Let's just capture him and lock him up, Usopp murmured. Although Cavendish had a crew, there was no sign of them anywhere, so they wouldn't waste time. They quickly returned to the ship, where their new companions were waiting to head to Dressrosa. Chapter 406, Korigana Island. Third-person POV. New word. The ship, with a giant snail guiding it, advanced through other waters of the New World as they approached a mysterious island, following the eternal pose that Luffy had given them. Finally, the island was near, and Korigana Island was right in front of everyone on the ship. The first thing noticed about this place was the thick, almost ghostly mist covering the entire island before they could get a better look at anything else on it. Well, we've finally arrived, Zoro commented on the ship while adjusting his sword. Not thanks to you, is it? Kuina teased from the side, as Zoro had wanted to take a different route than the one Luffy had suggested, claiming his intuition sensed a shortcut. Obviously, if it had been up to Zoro to navigate, they'd be heading back to the East Blue by now. Thanks to the giant snail, which had followed Luffy's eternal pose on its own, they had finally reached the destination. That's not true. Zoro denied with a grimace. Yahohoho. Brook appeared at that moment, patting Zoro on the shoulder. Don't worry, Zoro-san, the important thing is that we've arrived, he said. Hey! So, you're agreeing with her? Zoro exclaimed, making another face at Brook. Wolf, wolf! Chaochu began approaching the edge, barking as the group reached the location. Anyway, so this is the place where the world's greatest swordsman lives? Kuina said, still surprised after receiving that information from Luffy. Seems like it. I'm looking forward to seeing him so we can finally decide who's the strongest in the world. I've got all my swords sharpened for this, Zoro commented, tightening his grip on his sword. You're that excited. But why don't I sense any powerful presence coming from this island? Kuina remarked. Yeah, Mihawk isn't on the island, Zoro admitted, having already scouted with his haki long before their ship approached it. Then why were you so happy and acting like he was here? Kuina exclaimed, frowning. And so they headed for the island, with the snail finally stopping at an old and abandoned port on the island. Their feet touched the ground as everyone disembarked. They entered a ruined gate town. This place is really strange. Kuina commented. Do you think there are ghosts here? Brook couldn't help but express his fear. Wolf. Chaochu mocked him with the irony of him being a walking skeleton. Anyway, let's explore. Luffy said we might find good challenges here, with those monkeys, Zoro mentioned, and they began exploring the island shortly after. So, this is where we're supposed to find the creatures the captain asked for? Brook murmured, looking around. Yes. Chaochu already picked up their scent. Kuina said as Chaochu led the way. Luffy had asked them to capture a good number of human drills, which are highly intelligent gorillas that learn quickly. He had sent this team here specifically to collect some of these creatures, as he wanted to work with his scientists to develop them further. These were the only creatures Luffy didn't have on the Sky Island, and ones he certainly coveted to use in his training fields, or perhaps even create his personal army, since they were even more special than dinosaurs. He had also made sure to send Zoro and Kuina as his best swordsmen, despite thinking it was still too early for Zoro to receive the title of the world's greatest swordsman. They could certainly hold off Mihawk to capture the creatures and leave the island with their current strength. Wolf, wolf! Chaochu barked, drawing everyone's attention as he looked toward a huge castle ahead, appearing through the mist. It was Mihawk's house, the greatest swordsman in the world. It's a shame he's not here, Zoro said with some disappointment. Let's put that aside and follow Chaochu, Kuina said as the group's dog headed toward a forest in another direction, and they followed. It didn't take long for them to spot some small primates watching them from the forest at a distance. The creatures began running deeper into the forest after they had seen enough of the group. Everyone noticed it, but no one cared as they patiently waited at the entrance of the forest, already knowing what would happen. A commotion started inside, and heavy footsteps began approaching them, with a group of gorillas of various sizes marching towards them in a manner that resembled humans walking while carrying things, leaving some surprised. The captain was really right. They even use firearms. I wonder how he knows such precise and detailed things. Brook commented, looking at the monkeys holding pistols and rifles, wearing armor as they advanced toward the group. Well, these ones aren't very important, but those with swords, especially that one coming over here, are interesting. Zoro added, now sensing a strong presence coming from behind those gorillas. A huge shadow emerged from the forest mist, as the other monkeys cleared the way for this one, suggesting it was the most powerful among them. A 10-meter-tall gorilla appeared with a massive sword on its back, which seemed to be a copy of Mihawk's black blade, Yoru. It advanced calmly towards the group as the ground cracked with its steps. So big, yahoho! Brook commented, laughing. Zoro grinned at that moment, stepping forward. Who's going to face him? Let me start, he said as he walked, but soon a sword in a white sheath blocked his path. No. You already fought Mihawk at Marineford. Now let me see how his copy fights, Kuina said, ending with a firm tone. Although Zoro wanted to protest, he eventually relented. He had already fought Mihawk, and it wouldn't be fair not to let his childhood friend have the opportunity to face the power of the current strongest swordsman in the world, especially since Zoro could feel how this giant gorilla resembled the powerful swordsman. In the next moment, Kuina approached the group as she drew her sword from its sheath, Hyarenmaru, which emitted a frosty glow. Let's begin, then, Kuina said, moving alone against all the monkeys. She advanced swiftly the next moment as all the monkeys, offended by having only one of the 4 challengers approach, charged at her to kill her quickly. The other 3 just watched as Kuina rushed towards the group, and a battle erupted, with explosions dominating the scene as they fought each other. Time passed, with the battle growing in intensity, but Kuina didn't use her Shiva transformation. Instead, she relied solely on her speed, strength, techniques, and her own swordsmanship. It was only after an hour that things finally calmed down. The entire forest was frozen, with massive ice pillars rising into the sky, filled with the bodies of gorillas scattered throughout the area. Most of them were frozen inside blocks of ice, unable to move. The three companions merely watched as their comrade fought. "Looks like it's over," Zoro murmured. "Yes. Kuina-san is very strong." "Yahohoho." Brook laughed. Kuina stood in the middle of all the chaos, and the sound of her sword being sheathed was heard as she looked at all the opponents she had defeated, scattered around the area. The main gorilla, with its massive body, lay on the ground in front of her, heavily wounded, while its giant sword lay a short distance away after its defeat. She hadn't managed to freeze it because it was too strong, so she had to cut it down until it was defeated. She simply sighed and returned to her companions. "Well, let's start bringing them to the ship," she said. "All right." Zoro agreed as Brook ran to the ship. Chaochu barked, transforming into a Cerberus, while Brook returned at that moment with giant chains. He quickly dashed with his bony legs to chain up the gorillas in the forest. Zoro grabbed the enormous chain Brook had brought, and with Chaochu, began dragging all the defeated gorillas that had been tied to the main chain, moving them back toward the shore, creating a trail with the bodies of the gorillas as they approached the ship. Thus, they began loading all the animals onto the ship when they arrived back in that abandoned town. The snail ship was large enough to accommodate even the entire Germa kingdom before Luffy claimed it for himself, so it wasn't difficult to lock all those animals aboard. They chained them up on the boat and started preparing to depart, having nothing else to do on the island. "Well, that was pretty easy," Brook couldn't help but comment as the ship began to move away from the island. "It certainly was good training," Kuina said, satisfied. She hadn't even been injured, but she enjoyed testing her skills against those creatures. "I hope Luffy makes them stronger so they're more challenging," Zoro remarked, looking at the massive gorilla that was a copy of Mihawk. He had also wanted to fight the creatures, knowing he'd have more opportunities, with Luffy intending to modify them to be even more powerful. "Well, Luffy said they learn our abilities. They've probably already picked up on Kuina's attacks, so they'll naturally be stronger," Brook added. "If the captain and the scientists modify them like the other beasts, they'd be perfect for training. Even more so once they learn Haki," Kuina added. And so, the ship began to leave the island, heading back to Dressrosa. Several days passed, and a small boat with sails appeared near the island, approaching. A man, carrying a massive sword on his back, was finally returning home to rest for a while before setting off in search of new challenges on the sea. However, as soon as he set foot on the island, he knew someone had been there. Seeing the large tracks in the earth, the result of the gorillas' bodies being dragged to the shore, he decided to investigate rather than heading straight to his castle. Surprised, he found his forest, where the resident monkeys that lived on the island with him, frozen in several places, even though the ice had clearly been created days ago. "My intuition wasn't wrong, something happened on this island," he murmured, since a few days ago, his attention had been drawn to this direction while he was sailing the sea. So, he came here immediately. Approaching the ice, he touched it, his eyes gleaming. He knew exactly whose ice it was, having seen it at Marineford. They were here. Could it have been to challenge me? He reflected for a moment, looking at the frozen forest. They've certainly grown stronger. The girl, she seems even more skilled than when she fought with the Straw Hat a year ago when she transformed into Shiva, but she's certainly a swordsman, and appears very talented. The presence of Roronoa Zoro was also here. He analyzed. "Well, it seems that, by fate, we didn't meet. But I eagerly await our encounter, Roronoa Zoro." Mihawk murmured, leaving the frozen forest behind, not particularly bothered, even though many of the monkeys were missing. He returned to his castle, which was untouched, where he would drink some wine and rest in the coming days. Chapter 407 Zo01 Third-person POV. New word. In an area of the sea in the middle of the New World, the ocean became chaotic as explosions erupted in front of a massive shadow that stretched into the sky for those below, unable to see its end. This shadow kept moving. Its mere act of walking on the sea agitated the waters, creating enormous waves, and anyone who caught sight of this colossus in the open sea would turn back immediately, not wanting to face this creature. The massive shadow slowly revealed its true form, a colossal walking island. However, this island was unlike any other found on the seas. The creature that carried this vastness was a giant elephant, continuing its walk across the sea, with each step echoing like thunder over the ocean. Its name was Tsunesha, an ancient creature over 1,000 years old, condemned to a punishment that no one fully understood since the Void Century. Some people in this world knew that it was once a companion of Joy Boy, and among them, it was suspected that this punishment of wandering the seas had been imposed by Joy Boy himself or perhaps his companions from that time. Its enormous size for walking on the sea was nothing ordinary. After all, standing over 35 kilometers from its feet to the small shell on its back, what might seem like a small carapace to it was so large it could be considered an island, due to the civilization that lived there. Despite facing extreme climatic conditions so high above the clouds, something similar to Skypiea, the people living above were different from any race in the world. This place was home to a people known as the Minks, a race of fierce warriors with animal-like traits, living in harmony with the nature they had a strong connection with due to their beastly forms. Everything seemed normal this day, as its inhabitants were just going about their usual routines, until a short while ago, like any other day. But that changed when their two main leaders met during the changing of the guard and began fighting each other once again, as they used to do every day. The leader who ruled during the day, Inuarashi, Dog, officially known as the Duke of Day, and the other who ruled Zo during the night, Nekamamushi, Cat, officially known as the Duke of Night. Both strove for the best path for their people, always wanting to ensure that the Minks could grow happy and prosperous on Zo, until the day they were called to fight in Wano once again. However, due to past events related to Odin, to whom they were loyal and cooperated together until his death, the breaking of that cooperation had turned them into rivals. Every time they faced each other, it seemed they always wanted to surpass one another, but they always ended in a draw. They were much stronger than an ordinary person, reaching the level of a sub-commander or even a Yonko commander. They would unite their forces with their beast form under the full moon and wouldn't hesitate to join forces to protect Zo if necessary. At this moment, a battlefield had been created as the two fought one another, with explosions and blows echoing through the field. One was a dog, the other a cat, fighting fiercely without unleashing their race's most powerful strength, as they never fought under the full moon in their encounters. Once again, the entire population watched with concern, although they were used to this, as it happened nearly every day. As they exchanged blows on the battlefield, hitting each other, their injuries began to grow. "Today, I will defeat you," Inuarashi shouted, attempting to strike the other. "You're not strong enough. Now, lose like a cat, you mangy dog," Nekamamushi responded, counterattacking. And so, their fists collided once more. As the battle raged on, something unexpected happened this morning, drawing everyone's attention. While exchanging blows, both noticed that the sun had been covered by something that looked like a cloud. However, upon closer inspection of the shadow, they realized it was clearly not a cloud. They looked up. "Hey, is that a ship?" The Minks exclaimed, astonished, as they saw the shape of a ship with sails, coming toward their home. "Damn, what is that?" Nekamamushi and Inuarashi exclaimed at the same time, wondering if that uninvited ship was an enemy, as they stopped fighting and took a step back, carefully watching the ship approaching without warning. "Nekamamushi, it's already morning. You can sleep, I'll handle this," Inuarashi said, looking at his rival. "You think I'm going to let you govern our domain while a powerful enemy might be coming here? Don't be foolish," Nekamamushi responded angrily. "I swear, if you get in my way, I'll beat you so hard that I'll start ruling Zo by myself." "Don't be a fool," Inuarashi said, equally furious. "Please, rulers, calm down. Let's first see who this individual is." Some of the Minks tried to convince them to calm down. At this moment, the ship began to approach, revealing itself. "That ship looks like me," Nekamamushi said, surprised as he saw a feline figure on the bow. It was none other than the Sunny Go, with Bippo, Alvida, Jinbei, and Frankie aboard. "That's a lion, nothing to do with you, you stupid cat," Inuarashi mocked. "What did you say, you mangy dog?" Nekamamushi retorted. "Hey, that flag." The Minks were surprised, they received newspapers here and knew what that Jolly Roger represented, as the Sunny Go bore the Straw Hat Pirates symbol. "So, this is Zo, very high, good thing we have Beepo," Frankie said in amazement, looking at the place, while proudly showing off his ship, which he had built in Water 7, as he always did whenever he got the chance. "Well, it looks like they're already waiting for us," Alvida murmured, noticing the crowd of humanoid animals gathering as they approached. Jinbei was at the helm, but the one really steering the ship was Beepo, using the power of his Akuma no Mi to get closer and closer to the mink warriors. "So, I'm back here, after so many years," Beepo muttered. He knew he was one of them, not at all foolish, but somehow, he had been taken from this island when he was very young, with only hazy memories of his childhood here. He had left for certain reasons and ended up in the North Blue, where he met Lami when he was still a child. The girl had adopted him as her companion since then, and he grew up with her, even though he was just a child. Lami had practically been a mother to him. Now, he was returning to his homeland with a mix of excitement and fear. "Hey, Beepo? Are you going to do what the captain asked? After all, he asked you to represent us here." Alvida spoke to him. "I don't know. I don't know if I can do this," Beepo replied, hesitating. Alvida just sighed, realizing she would have to give him some encouragement as she approached the polar bear mink. "Well, anyway, let's go," she said, pushing him right off the ship just 30 meters away from Zo. "Ah." Beepo was first surprised but quickly calmed down in the air, kicking the air with Jeppo and starting to stabilize, landing on the ground in front of all the residents who had been waiting for a fight. After all, as a mink, he should represent the crew. After landing smoothly on the ground, the entire tribe was looking at him with some surprise, while 3 others landed beside him, seemingly from 3 different races. Despite Alvida being a human woman, Frankie was far too large and unreal for a human, and Jinbei was clearly a fishman. Beepo, although feeling some fear, quickly controlled the ship, landing carefully beside them. "Hey, what are you doing here?" Nekomamushi and Inuarashi asked at the same time in a dangerous tone. "That's Beepo I saw in the newspaper. But he's also a mink." The minks quickly realized that Beepo was one of them. "How strange. Does anyone remember him?" The curious and cautious eyes soon began questioning Beepo. After all, they didn't know him, even though Beepo had been born here. As the gossip continued, the leaders didn't seem too fond of hearing about this crew from the newspaper, even though they had a common enemy, Kaido. Meanwhile, the Straw Hats present all looked at Beepo, as Luffy had asked him to represent the crew here. "Hey, tell me exactly what your intentions are," Nekomamushi and Inuarashi demanded, seeing the silence from the other side. "Ugh, no way, put the wig on him," Alvida sighed, as Frankie, with his huge body, which made the minks question if he was even human, pulled something from his belt and held it up. It was a wig, and in the next moment, he placed it on Beepo's head. Beepo hesitated for a moment, not even feeling the wig being put on, but in the next instant, his eyes lit up, making all the minks sense a shift in the atmosphere around the polar bear, one of their own kind. "It's been a long time since I've been here. This place is quite nostalgic. How are you, mink tribe? Let me introduce myself. I am Beepo, a mink like you before anything else, and a member of the Straw Hat crew, led by Monkey D. Luffy. We're here for a purpose." Beepo began, as everyone stared, stunned by the sudden change, while he seemed to stand confidently against his entire race, without any fear. "We want to make Zo our ally, and of course, also strengthen our naval power within our fleet. That's why I'm here, to challenge all of you," Beepo said, stomping firmly on the ground as he stepped away from the rest of the crew, walking toward the entire mink tribe. "If I defeat all of you, I want you to join my captain's fleet. If we lose, we'll leave and give you a gift. A way to enter your beast form without needing the full moon. If you join our crew, you'll have that too, of course," Beepo added. With that, everyone stared in astonishment at Beepo's words, even the 2 leaders looked suspicious. It seemed that Beepo, now radiating an air of confidence, was approaching the crowd watching him as he prepared to face his entire race. Of course, his words made everyone look at him with distrust, but in the next moment, shock spread through the crowd. Beepo began to grow, proving the truth of his words. His body transformed into its beast form as his clothes ripped, without needing the moon or the rumble balls Chopper had created to enter Sulong mode. He transformed into a massive bear over 20 meters tall in just a second, stomping on the ground and making the entire place tremble. All the minks were stunned by what they were seeing. "I'm here for a simple challenge. If you beat me, I will give you the way to enter this mode. If I win, all of Zo's territory will become part of the Straw Hat crew, and all the minks will join our crew. But don't worry, the captain is fair, and you won't regret it," he said, issuing the challenge, while all the minks stared, shocked by Beepo's form. His body was in the Sulong form, something that usually only happened at night under the full moon, but now he had managed to activate this transformation in the middle of the day. They didn't know how he had done it, as his body began to electrify. Beepo was one of the most powerful members of the crew at this moment, even though he still retained his hesitant personality and lack of confidence. However, as soon as he wore the wig, he somehow overcame any hesitation, taking on a character ever since the days of Whiskey Peak. Beepo possessed the 6 powers in their most advanced forms, being the most skilled in this area. He had medium-level armament haki and observation haki, as well as the Fuwa Fuwa no Mi, a legendary power comparable to the tremor power of the late Whitebeard. And then there was his beast form, which multiplied his strength several times over. He was a true powerhouse, and now he was challenging the entire mink race to prove his superior power, even against his own kind. Chapter 408 Zo02. Third-person POV. New word. The giant bear with a wig stood in front of thousands of animals after his challenge was declared to all, while his body continued to emit electricity. "Hey, is this guy serious?" the minks murmured, looking at Beepo with various expressions. There was disbelief, anger, curiosity, caution, and fear among the entire race, watching that polar bear enter his Sulong form with sheer willpower, something they wouldn't have believed if someone had told them. Yet, there, before their eyes, it was happening exactly as they saw it. "Hey, don't underestimate me, you fool!" Inuarashi, the master of the day, exclaimed, dissatisfied with the type of challenge that had been made by this mink. After all, it was inadmissible for someone to want to challenge his entire race as if underestimating them like no one had ever done in their life. Beepo didn't even care, while using his Sulong form. "Come all at once, that way it'll be fairer." He spoke arrogantly. How can he do this? Some minks murmured still in disbelief. He wants to challenge all of us? Since when has there been such a powerful mink? He's just trying to show off. He can't be that strong, I'm sure the leaders will fight him and defeat him, others murmured. At that moment, Nekamamushi, the master of the night, stepped forward. "Leave it to me, I will face him and defeat him." He spoke arrogantly. "Hey, you may rule the night, but it's morning now. Leave him to me, you idiot." Inuarashi spoke with arrogance and anger. "Don't be foolish, let me defeat him. After that, I'll go to sleep while you handle the rest," Nekamamushi said with an arrogant tone, believing he could easily deal with Beepo even in his Sulong form. As he approached Beepo, "Come then, polar bear, I challenge you." He approached Beepo with a challenging tone. But, in the next moment, as he stopped in front of Beepo waiting for him to attack, a giant paw was in front of him, mixed with electricity and armament haki. Nekamamushi barely had time to react, crossing his arms to defend himself, but his body was shot backward in the next instant, being thrown back into the crowd. Everyone watched in shock, trying to get away before the master of the night crashed into one of the structures at the entrance of the city, near the crowd. The explosion reverberated through the area, while a silence took over, and everyone turned to look at Beepo, who had thrown one of the strongest of the tribe so easily. Even the master of the day was left with his mouth open in shock. This guy. Is he serious and wanted to fight all of us? Inuarashi murmured, realizing that it might be unfair to have the entire race fight against just one, but now understanding that perhaps he could defeat them. "Prepare for battle, everyone," he exclaimed, as all the minks prepared to fight as best they could in the next moment. "That's good. I like the look in your eyes." Beepo, wanting to prove his strength, saw all the minks starting to prepare to face him there. Then the Straw Hat Bear charged violently, taking the initiative. "Come on, everyone," he shouted, advancing with such determination that everyone took a step back, clearing space, while only Inuarashi remained to try to stop the beast. In the next moment, both collided with each other as Inuarashi, much smaller in size, tried to stop Beeple from advancing, trying to push him back. Both fought in a contest of strength, each trying to overpower the other. But quickly, the Master of the Day realized he was being dragged back, and under everyone's gaze, he was sent flying, crashing into another building at high speed. Did both rulers get thrown like that? The minx looked on with a gaze of fear. Don't let him subdue us. Pedro, a lion mink, exclaimed as he drew his sword and charged at Beeple, and everyone quickly followed suit, trying to stop him. Yes, we can't let Pedro be left behind. We must follow him and defeat him too. The other minks, encouraged by Pedro's courage, quickly charged as well, showing their fists, claws, and weapons they carried. Quickly, numerous minks joined Pedro, charging into battle as the air above Beeple filled with them, ready to face the Sulong mink. Beeple prepared himself as all the strongest minks, just below the rulers, advanced toward him, small in comparison to his size as well. Very well. Beeple calmly looked at them, waiting for them to make their moves. They launched several attacks at him, as he put one hand in front, and numerous explosions began. His hand disappeared, and all the attacks were stopped with a hand covered in haki. Even Pedro couldn't surpass his defense, his sword stuck in Beeple's arm. Beeple then made his move, quickly swinging his arm, striking them, grabbing some and throwing them back as he captured the first wave of enemies. Some managed to escape as their comrades fell to the ground around them. Let's go! They were determined, trying to attack him again. But even when they got past his defense, his Sulong form provided too much resistance, and he easily endured the blows as if receiving some kind of massage. Can we not defeat this mink? That was the thought of everyone. Prepare yourselves! Pedro exclaimed as he saw Beeple preparing a move. However, the Straw Hat Bear simply vanished from the spot, reappearing near the others who barely had time to react before they were struck down in the next moment. Beeple stood atop more than 100 fallen minks, defeated on the ground. Even Pedro and many others were among them. Those who were distant, watching from afar, retreated when they saw Beeple standing over their most powerful warriors, fear in their eyes. Should we face him? They asked themselves with a bit of discouragement. Beeple stood still, seeing only the weak, not moving to fight against those who had no spirit before him. Boom! Boom! At that moment, two explosions occurred at the entrance of the city, as Inuarashi and Nekomamushi emerged from the destroyed buildings, advancing with a determined look toward Beeple, surrounded by Pedro and the others fallen at his feet. No, don't underestimate him. Nekomamushi said, determined, as they advanced calmly. Beeple stood still, watching them with a satisfied look. Come on! Beeple said with a firm gaze, and in the next moment, the two advanced to face him. Boom! Both sides charged at each other as an explosion of armament haki swept through the area. The other three members of the Straw Hat crew could only watch them fighting from a distance, as none of them would get involved in this fight. Well, it looks like we'll have to wait. Alvida murmured, looking off into the distance and seeing the battle unfold. Certainly, the minks are a warrior race. I've never seen Beeple enter this state on his own, so I'm impressed, as I've rarely seen anyone enter this state in my lifetime. The captain will surely have great power if he can get the entire race into Sulong form like this. Jinbei commented. They're super strong. Frankie said, but they still lack a bit of metal in their bodies. He analyzed. Not everyone is a cyborg like you, Alvida teased, while Frankie just smiled, unoffended. Boom! 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 Then the battle in front of them began, with explosions erupting all over the place as they advanced away from where the fallen minks in the city were, the blasts leading them into the forest. Inuarashi and Nekomamushi were determined not to fall behind this mink. As they ran around him, using sorrow, the giant Beeple simply appeared near them, striking them. Inuarashi and Nekomamushi crashed into the ground, burying it with the force of the destruction from their bodies. Can we not do anything against him? Inuarashi murmured, unable to believe the humiliation he was enduring in this fight. Come on! Inuarashi! We can do better than this! Nekomamushi crawled out of another hole, his face a little wounded. Yes, we won't end this so easily. Inuarashi agreed as he too regained his resolve. In the next moment, they charged toward Beppo, who was waiting for them, and a new fight began. Well, they are determined. Jinbei murmured, hearing the explosions in the forest in the distance. Damn! A voice came from afar, as Pedro started to get up, feeling so weak. We did nothing, he said. Are you Pedro? A voice came from beside him, while Beppo fought with Inuarashi and Nekomamushi in the forest, the explosions continuing, as Alvida approached him. Yes, what do you want, human? Pedro, still weak, looked at her with suspicion. You see, my husband is interested in you, he's even considering putting you on the main crew, which is surprising, but I still don't see great strength in you, but who knows, Luffy doesn't usually make mistakes. She spoke. Main crew? Pedro looked at her, puzzled. Meanwhile, Jinbei, still watching the fight as the forest was being destroyed, sensed something with his haki and, upon looking back, noticed something was wrong. Something wrong? Frankie asked him from the side. Yes, there's a presence climbing up to this place, it's weak. Jinbei murmured, and both stared in that direction. A few meters away, indeed, someone was climbing up Zunesha's skin. The man had been climbing for days without stopping, finally nearing the land of the minks, his goal ever since he had to leave Wano. This samurai had an important mission, to deliver a message and summon the rulers, Inuarashi and Nekomamushi, to fight in Wano. Now, a battle would soon begin with Yonko pirate groups, and it could be the chance to take down Kaido, finally freeing Wano and opening its borders. The Red Scabbards would come in a year, along with their new ruler, Odin's eldest son. This samurai had nearly died trying to get past Kaido's troops when leaving Wano, as there were far more soldiers than usual, with the entire Beast Pirates army concentrating elsewhere. He managed to escape the country, guided by a vivre card his master had given him. Even when he saw the giant beast carrying the island on its back, he was determined to fulfill his mission and help free his country. And so, he climbed, enduring hunger and thirst, drinking only rainwater, even suffering through massive storms that tried to knock him down the entire time. But the man was resolute. He continued until the last few meters, finally reaching the edge of the minx land. His last efforts were rewarded as he managed to pull his body up. After taking a moment to breathe, happy to have finally made it, he lifted his gaze. As he did, he saw two figures. They weren't humans. One was a fishman, and the other, a cyborg with massive shoulders and arms. He looked at them suspiciously, and then, when he looked at the ship, his eyes widened in surprise. The Straw Hats, he murmured, seeing the flag of the Sunny go, before turning his attention to Zunesha, where there were hundreds of minks. Even Inuarashi and Nekomamushi appeared after Beppo threw them out of the forest, having given them a beating. The man from Wano was shocked to see the entire mink race subdued, while others watched from a distance but didn't get too involved. Chapter 409 Zo03 Third Person POV New Word. I was completely silent, with all the warriors of the fallen race, even their leaders, while only a few minks managed to stand up. Most, however, remained motionless on the ground. Their eyes, filled with feelings and questions, were fixed on Beppo. Meanwhile, in front of them, Beppo stood still, knowing the fight wasn't over yet. Suddenly, Nekomamushi started to move and brought his paw down, pressing it against the ground as he trembled while rising, his gaze still locked on Beppo, determined. The same could be said for Inuarashi, who struggled to his feet with as much difficulty as his companion. We won't lose like this, no matter who you are, Inuarashi said with frustration. Yes. Nekomamushi spoke, standing in front of everyone there. As the samurai watched, stunned. He had a message to deliver, a chance to fight against Kaido and possibly join the Straw Hats. He had not imagined he would encounter some members of this crew here, with a giant white mink he didn't know, overpowering all the other minks. You want to fight? I understand that, very well, let's continue. Beppo said with confidence. He wasn't exerting himself to defeat them. Maybe his opponents hadn't entered Sulong mode like he had, so, to not completely humiliate his future comrades, he returned to the group that came with him. Give me the rumble balls, it's time to see their true potential, Beppo said confidently, while Jinbei reached into his pocket, pulled out 2 yellow balls, and threw them to each of the leaders. They caught them as they stood up, looking at Beppo with confusion. With this, you can transform into Sulong mode too, prepared by our doctor, Beppo said, pausing before continuing. You won't win like this, so it's better if you transform, Jinbei said seriously. Around the area, everyone watched with curiosity. Each of the leaders took the small ball, looking at each other cautiously. They didn't know why, but they simply swallowed them, trusting the words, as they saw no reason for them to be lying. Minks are easy to convince when you're sincere. Nothing happened in the first few seconds, but then, under everyone's watchful eyes, thunder and lightning began to envelop their bodies as they grew, entering Sulong mode, astonishing all the minks who were watching. This? Is it possible? I can't believe they're really doing it. The minks were all stunned, expressing their surprise. Good. They really changed, Beppo commented, satisfied to see it actually happen. Inuarashi and Nekomamushi entered the form they only used once a month. When they transformed into Sulong and fought each other, the destruction was not small in Zou. However, now they didn't need to fight each other, as they had a common enemy. It really worked, I feel stronger. Inuarashi and Nekomamushi began inspecting their bodies, realizing their strength had multiplied, feeling intoxicated by the power. Beppo looked on, satisfied. You look strong, but will you be able to make me use my devil fruit, he said with a superior tone. Don't underestimate me, polar bear. I'm the strongest dog mink. Inuarashi declared. You're mistaken, I'm stronger than you won't stand a chance against me now. Nekomamushi retorted, as both still maintained their rivalry, but nonetheless focused on the enemy ahead. In the next moment, all three disappeared, and a massive explosion occurred in the middle of the area, tearing up the ground as the force of both threw even the fallen minks' bodies aside, while Armament Haki's thunder and lightning filled the landscape. Alvita returned to her crew, also trying to protect herself. Even the samurai could only see the shockwave coming toward him, sending him flying, thinking he was about to fall from Zunesha. However, he was caught by a large hand that grabbed his clothes and brought him back. It was Frankie, extending his hand, activating a device that could shoot it forward and pull him back. It was then that a truly powerful battle began. Giant figures started moving at high speed, imperceptible to the naked eye of most watching. All the minks retreated as the fight moved back into the forest, destroying everything in its path. Occasionally, it was possible to see Beppo fighting the two in different parts, with his image disappearing the next moment, but most of the time, he was the one hitting them. No mink could keep up with the high-speed fight as all three let their instincts take over in a frenetic battle. Still, not even the most powerful minks had a clear view. After all, Beppo was still at an advantage. Besides having a high level of armament and observation haki, his real strength lay in the 6 styles, which allowed him to quickly dominate the fight with his movements. His flexibility, using the air as a platform with Jeppo or even Saro, allowed him to move at high speed, with small teleportation-like bursts, kicking the ground multiple times while attacking his opponents, evading their strikes. Inuarashi and Nekomamushi, even in their Sulong transformation, only gained resilience, feeling imposing, yet barely able to fight against this polar bear, who continued to wound them more and more, though they remained standing with their injuries increasing. The fight lasted about an hour, with more and more parts of the terrain being destroyed, even reaching a bit of the city. Everyone just watched, already on their feet, waiting for the battle to end. Even Zunesha seemed disturbed by the explosions it felt on its back, worried about the minks and wondering what was happening up there. After a larger explosion than any before, things began to calm down, with no further movement as the impact of the blast sent wind through the entire city. Finally, the space around the middle of the forest, where a large crater had formed, began to clear of dust, revealing the two minks losing their transformation and falling to their knees, exhausted and bleeding, while Beppo remained standing, watching them calmly, though he had some injuries too, but nowhere near losing. They looked at Beppo with a defeated expression. It seems you're still not used to the rumble ball, which is why you lasted only an hour. Beppo commented calmly. We can't even defeat him. He's on a whole other level. Inuarashi said in frustration, watching the scene unfold. Did you use all your power? Nekomamushi asked, spitting blood. I think you know the answer, Beepo replied simply, without much movement. This is really embarrassing. Could you show us your true strength? They asked curiously, and Beepo nodded, seeing no problem with it. Alright, if you want to see my true strength, then watch, he said, as he raised his front paw toward a part of the sky. Inuarashi and Nekomamushi started looking up, wondering what he was planning to do. At that moment, something began to happen in the sky. The atmosphere between the clouds seemed to distort, and the clouds started moving strangely, revealing a small glowing dot in the distance. This made both minks observe in silence, their eyes fixed on that small point, not knowing exactly what it was or what Beepo was doing. Slowly, the brightness in the sky intensified. The point of light began to grow, increasing in size with each passing second, until it became clear what everyone was seeing, causing even those unaware of what Beepo was doing to look up at the sky at that moment, noticing the light in the middle of the blue sky with small clouds. Inuarashi and Nekomamushi widened their eyes, realizing what it really was. Is this really starting? They couldn't believe what they were seeing. The meteor could be heard at that moment as it tore through the sky with impressive speed, even from kilometers away, leaving a trail of fire and sparks in its wake. Its brightness became so intense that it outshone the sun in the sky, with the air seeming to vibrate around the celestial body, and heat reaching them as the enormous meteor passed over Zunesha, with everyone watching, hypnotized. Beepo simply looked up at the sky with an expression of pure calm, seemingly unfazed by the destruction that the massive stone coming from the atmosphere could cause. Is this what you wanted to see? Beepo murmured, almost as a taunt to them. The meteor continued for hundreds of kilometers away as it fell into the distance, heading toward the middle of the sea, racing toward the horizon until everyone saw it collide at the edge. A flash of light appeared at that moment with the impact, and the sound of it came shortly after, as the sea rose with flames and a large wave disturbed the waters. Even Zunesha itself seemed to tremble, its eyes quivering as it glanced at the scene. Not even the millennial beast would be unshaken by receiving a meteor like that. As the sea rose from the impact, a shockwave traveled across the ocean, crashing against Zunesha's legs, though it didn't affect the creature. The sea would remain turbulent for hours due to the impact, while Beepo turned back to those who had challenged him. Are you satisfied with this? He asked calmly. Is that your power? Inuarashi and Nekomamushi were visibly shaken by it. This is truly the power he sent to Big Mom a year ago. I think he overdid it. This will cause problems for all the islands around here. Jinbei commented, somewhat shocked by this display of power. I wouldn't want to be hit by something like that. This power could wipe out entire islands. Frankie admitted honestly, wondering if this power could even be compared to the ancient weapons. Our friend here seems quite shaken, but more importantly, who is he? Alvida asked, noticing the samurai trembling beside them after being caught by Frankie. I don't know. I just didn't let him fall, but he seems to know us, Frankie responded. It's hard for anyone not to recognize us. Jinbei murmured. While all the minks were shaken by the attack, the rulers looked at the one who had caused such a natural disaster with apparent ease. We can't defeat him. Inuarashi admitted now. Nekomamushi didn't respond, only lowering his head, knowing just like his companion that if they were to receive such an attack, they wouldn't survive. Do you plan to fight Kaido and Wano? Inuarashi asked, despite his frustration. Yes, my captain is stronger than me, so we will destroy Kaido and the Yonkou. Their era is over, and we will only finish it, Beepo said firmly. Both looked at each other for a moment, seemingly conversing through their eyes despite their rivalry, and then they kneeled. They didn't plan on joining the Straw Hats or fighting against Kaido. After all, Oden had said that only 1 year later would Kaido's defeat happen, but now, how could they fight against such power? We accept joining your fleet, and we will fight in Wano with you, they both said at the same time, as Beepo looked on, satisfied with their decision. Chapter 410-04 Third Person POV. New word. It seems it's over. Jinbei murmured as he watched Beepo emerge from the forest under everyone's gaze, his transformation slowly returning to normal while he walked confidently with the two rulers, leading the way in front of his defeated challengers. They approached the place where the fight had begun, while the two leaders looked at their people with a certain caution and confusion in their eyes. "Take care of all the injured, but first of all, we lost the fight, we can't defeat him." One of them spoke to the whole crowd, visibly shocked by this. "We'll accept fighting alongside them in Wano, but I won't let my people submit to this Yonko until we truly know him, though he has already proven to be extremely powerful and trustworthy, as just this subordinate had the strength to defeat us." Inuarashi added. "Will we fight with the pirates?" Some minks asked. "We won't force anyone to do it." This polar bear said that his captain won't send any newly acquired troops to Wano to fight, but Inuarashi and I are going anyway. "After all, we have a few things to settle from 19 years ago, there," Nekomamushi said, and everyone nodded in agreement. "Now, take care of all the injured. We will talk to them while you try to clean up all this destruction," Inuarashi finished. "Well, I guess you don't need this anymore," Frankie said, approaching Beppo and taking off his wig. Beppo's confident face shifted from a sharp look to someone a bit goofy, and he lost all his commanding atmosphere. His gaze dropped to the two commanders who had been staring at him the whole time, wounded, and it made him feel a bit intimidated. Amidst the scene, all the minks were helping their fallen comrades in cleaning up the destruction caused by the fight. They looked at him with curiosity, seeing the most powerful mink of their race after today. However, the confidence they had seen in him until now vanished, giving way to a Beppo with his mouth slightly open as everyone stared at him, causing him to look somewhat scared, which quickly embarrassed him. He simply bowed to everyone. "I'm sorry," he murmured. In the next moment, all the minks fell to the ground, stunned by something so unexpected. "What was that? Just a moment ago, you looked like a warrior who could take on everyone, and now you've turned into a coward apologizing?" One of the minks exclaimed. "Where is the man who could destroy Zunesha with a meteor?" Both leaders questioned with shark-like grins and white eyes, not believing what had just happened. They couldn't understand how the removal of a wig had completely changed the bear before them. "I'm sorry," was Beppo's only response, while everyone grimaced. "Why are you apologizing?" Everyone shouted. "Well, it seems our bear is back to normal," Alvida murmured with a smile as she took a few steps forward. "Now that everything's settled, let's start talking," Alvida said, as a samurai, still trembling from the meteor, approached, eager to speak with Inuarashi and Nekomamushi. "Lords Inuarashi and Nekomamushi." The samurai approached the leaders, who were also surprised. "Are you from Wano?" they asked, raising their eyebrows. "Yes, I am. I came from there precisely to deliver a message from Lord X about the latest news in the newspapers. Wano will be a battlefield bigger than anything in the last 19 years. As you must know, the fight against the Straw Hats and against Big Mom and Kaido is only a matter of time while Kaido is preparing all of his troops," he said. "Yes, we know. But why did you come here, risking yourself?" Inuarashi asked. "Lord X plans to join the battle against Kaido alongside the forces of this crew. Just like many in Wano, this could be an opportunity, so he is inviting you to take part," the man explained. "Well, this is a bit surprising, but coincidentally, we were already planning to do that. After all, we just lost to one of this crew's members. We'll end up accepting the proposal," they responded. "Well, I guess that's good," the samurai said, a little lost. "Well, anyway, let's continue our conversation," Alvida said, stepping ahead of Beppo. She could tell he had already done what Luffy expected, and now it was time to discuss the future of Zunesha. "Yes, please, follow us," both leaders requested as the entire crew, along with a very embarrassed Beppo under everyone's gazes and another samurai, headed into the city to talk. Things began to calm down a bit as they were invited to a sort of celebration, quickly turning into a feast full of animals. As the leaders sat in the center with the pirates and samurai, the minks, being a very friendly people, soon engaged in lively conversations with the humans. "You're human? I've never seen a human so tough. You're almost as big as me. By the way, my name is Blackback. I fought your friend, but I lost miserably," a gorilla said, talking to Frankie, admiring his hard and massive arms. "I'm half human, but super awesome," Frankie replied. In another area, Alvida was drinking alcohol when she was approached by a woman wielding a sword and wearing a bikini. "Hey, you're a human warrior. I feel you're strong, but I've never seen a human with such smooth skin." "It looks very beautiful," Wanda said as she moved closer to Alvida. "Thanks. I guess," Alvida replied, drinking but not really bothered. "My name is Wanda," the mink introduced herself. Alvida responded bluntly. "Tell me, that Beppo, is he single?" Wanda asked, curious and interested in someone so strong from her own race. "Yes. Hey Beppo, it's time to get married. There's Wanda here," Alvida shouted, causing Wanda to blush in embarrassment. Meanwhile, Beppo didn't even seem to hear Alvida, too shy as he was surrounded by minks who were looking at him curiously, touching him and wondering how he could be so strong. "I'm sorry," was the only thing he could say. "It's a shame you guys don't have cola, but lucky for you, I brought some for myself," Frankie exclaimed, pulling out a barrel of cola he had taken from the ship, drinking it right there while offering it to other minks. "Your crew member is very strange because of a simple wig, there's nothing special about it," Inuarashi remarked, looking at the wig, trying to figure out its power over Beppo, but there was nothing there. They even tried it on their own heads, and still, nothing. "Look again, we need to figure out what power this gives the bear. Without it, he's just a shy mink." "I don't understand," Nekomamushi commented. "Forget that, let's get back to where we left off," Inuarashi said finally, turning back to Jinbei in front of him, who was quietly drinking sake, waiting for the leaders of Zou to continue. "Are you saying your captain wants to move Zunesha to Wano?" "That's impossible since Zunesha doesn't listen to anyone. Only Kazuki Oden's commands could be given to the elephant, as he had a specific type of control. It's amazing, but no one else has been able to talk to him," Nekomamushi explained. "Yes, Luffy mentioned that," Jinbei confirmed, "but it seems he wants to try anyway. He'd like you all to be prepared for the war as well. If you're going to fight in Wano, he wants you to stay here while he plans to visit you soon," Jinbei explained. After all, Luffy didn't want to move Zou's main forces and leave the mink tribe unprotected there. "I see. Well, that's fine, we can do that," Inuarashi responded. "There's also one more thing," Alvida stepped forward before joining the conversation. "The poneglyph you have hidden here. Luffy already knows of its existence and would like to see it." Upon hearing this, all the minks tensed up, uncomfortable knowing that one of the island's biggest secrets had been discovered by someone outside. "I know you might be upset, but our captain knows exactly where it is. However, he is not your enemy. Remember that. He wants to build a powerful force, and you will be a part of it," Jinbei explained, as Inuarashi sighed and looked at Nekomamushi before turning back to Alvida. "Well, it seems we have no choice. Do you want to see the poneglyph now?" Inuarashi asked. Jinbei shook his head. "No, leave that for the captain. He will come visit you as I mentioned," he gave his response. "Anyway, the captain is interested in one of you. He wants us to bring back someone named Pedro," Frankie said, while Pedro, among the minks who were listening to the conversation, showed surprise. That human woman had already mentioned that the captain was interested in him before, but he didn't know why. "Pedro?" Nekomamushi seemed surprised, as Pedro was one of the guardians. "Yes, my husband wants to speak with him, so he wants us to bring him back with us," Alvida said. "Very well, I'll go," Pedro said immediately, not wanting to prolong the conversation. "What else could I do?" "I'll talk with your captain," he said finally. "Anyway, let's get going. We have nothing more to do here," Jinbei said, while bringing a chest and placing it in front of the minks, opening it to reveal numerous rumble balls. "This will allow you to enter Sulong form, but don't overuse them. I know you need to train. From what we noticed in Beppo's fight against Inuarashi and Nekomamushi, you can last only an hour, but this can have side effects if you use them too much, understood?" he warned. "This is invaluable. We thank you for this. Now our people will be much stronger in any emergency," both leaders commented with satisfaction. "Anyway, let's head to Dressrosa," Alvida said, standing as if she were leaving. There was nothing more to do in Zunesha. Almost everyone followed her back to the ship, and the samurai ended up going with Pedro. But as they boarded the ship, a stowaway also snuck aboard. Although everyone noticed, no one really cared, except for Pedro, who didn't seem to realize. Meanwhile, Beppo started using his powers, and the ship began to fly, moving forward quickly. "Goodbye, Beppo," a female mink excitedly shouted, bidding farewell to Beppo as he stood at the edge of the ship with a lipstick mark on his face. Of all the crew members who had separated from the main Straw Hat ship, those who had reached Zunesha had traveled the greatest distance between Dressrosa and their destination, so they were the last to arrive at the island or their target. Even so, with Beppo's power, they were much faster, flying through the sky at hundreds of kilometers per hour. Thus, the ship disappeared over the horizon, heading toward Dressrosa. Chapter 411 Pleasures and Interruption. Third-person POV. New word. The waters were calm in the middle of the sea as a black ship continued cutting through the waves. It was the feared Black Pearl, still sailing the waters of the New World, heading in a specific direction. So Beppo defeated the two rulers of Zou. Ha ha. I wish I had seen that. Luffy spoke into a Den Mushi. Yes, we're heading back to Dressrosa right now, with Pedro and a mink that snuck onto the ship, Jinbei responded from the other side. Great, you can head there. We're recruiting the last pirate group before returning and organizing our forces to advance to Wano. Luffy said calmly. Alright, we'll continue our journey here, Jinbei said. You can, we'll talk in Dressrosa. He responded before starting to hang up the Den Mushi, but a voice suddenly came from the other side. Husband! Alvida exclaimed over the phone. Hello, my love, how are you? He asked with a smile. I'm fine, I'll be waiting for you in Dressrosa, so don't be late. She said, and Luffy smiled. Of course, we'll head there, see you soon. Luffy said before hanging up the Den Mushi. So we're close. Vivi spoke beside Luffy. He was sitting on a beach chair, as usual, wearing his shorts to enjoy the day, while Vivi was in a bikini on the chair next to him. Yes. According to Baroque Works information, the fleet we're looking for should be in these waters, so we'll be heading back soon, right, Nami? Luffy spoke to his navigator, who was also in a bikini, walking across the deck while looking at a map. She looked at Luffy. Yes, we're heading to the position you gave me, Nami said, and Luffy nodded, satisfied with that. Stop looking at that map and come over here with your husband before we get there. Luffy said as Nami sighed before going over to him, sitting beside him while putting away the map and looking at Luffy. Only the three of them were on the deck while Lucy was eating the food Hachi was making in the kitchen, so Luffy didn't miss the opportunity to play with his wives, while Nami was surprised by Luffy's sudden touch on the lower part of her bikini. You want to do this here? Nami raised an eyebrow at Luffy. Lemon scene happened. He was about to choose, but something in the sea caught his eye at that moment. Well, looks like we'll have to wait until tonight, Luffy murmured, ending the sex session. The fleet he had been looking for had finally been spotted. Oh, what a shame. Nami murmured, putting her bikini back on and fixing her hair. That was a mood killer. Vivi also exclaimed, as she adjusted herself. We should probably take a bath, she said, and Nami agreed, feeling the same. The two of them went inside the ship. Luffy stayed there with a big smile. He would finish what he had started later that night. Now, he had another matter to attend to, dealing with the peculiar group approaching the crew. Chapter 412 Happo Navy 01. Third-person POV. New word. The Chinjo family was sailing across the seas, embarking on another job since they were a mercenary organization known as the Happo Navy. They had started in the West Blue and had gradually made a name for themselves in the New World over the past few years, taking on various jobs in these waters. Today, they were transporting a large sum of money for an organization, escorting a ship from a country that heavily relied on the Don Quixote family's weapons. Now that the family had been destroyed, they had to turn to another organization to purchase arms. Many countries that still depended on the Don Quixote family and their weapons factories were in the same predicament. Numerous conflicts continued to ravage their lands, and some countries and organizations had abandoned this supplier as soon as Doflamingo was killed, knowing that without Joker, they were as fragile as glass, easily shattered. Those who still trusted in them due to Kaido's association were caught by surprise when Dressrosa fell along with the family. They no longer had a way to receive their shipments, even though this would have happened eventually with the organization heading to war in Wano against the Straw Hats. The sea is in chaos right now. Do you think we'll make it to our new supplier without any problems? A man, who was from a kingdom embroiled in civil war, asked to board the ship in the center of the Happo Navy. He needed to bring a new shipment to his kingdom. After all, they had to fight against the rebels who had risen up against the royal family due to their tyranny. They knew this, but they could do nothing except fight for their king, even though he was a tyrant. The Happo Navy is well known. Few pirates could stand against them, another man replied. I hope you're right. The first man murmured. Meanwhile, on one of the larger ships, Sai, one of the main members, approached his grandfather, the fearsome Chinjo, the drill. This man had a bounty of 500 million berries and was known for his powerful headbutt, though not as much anymore due to an encounter with Vice Admiral Garp. Even so, he was still a formidable pirate with conqueror's haki, which said a lot about him. Grandpa, are you okay? Sai approached Chinjo, who had been staring at one side of the horizon for several minutes, something unusual for his grandfather. Did you notice something, Grandpa? Boo, Sai's brother, also approached. Yes. Something is coming from that direction. Chinjo murmured, his narrowed gaze indicating that his haki had detected a certain danger approaching. Should we prepare to fight? Sai, seeming to read his grandfather's mind, asked. Yes, tell everyone to prepare for a major battle, he said in a grim tone. Sai nodded and left to use the Den Den Mushies to give orders to all the ships of the Happo Navy. As Chinjo had foreseen, a dark spot began to appear on the horizon, and Boo, standing beside him, grabbed a spyglass and pointed it toward that direction, beginning to make out the ship in the distance and its flag. That. His voice came out shaky and nervous as one of the main causes of the chaos currently gripping the New World was heading toward them. There's no doubt, that ship. His nervousness was not only due to the symbol on the ship's sail but also because of the ship itself. Rumors and reports had been spreading about this crew appearing in various places in the New World, but this ship represented the worst of it, as it had been sighted at Gran Tesoro just days ago. Tell me, who are they? Chinjo was losing his patience with his grandson, who was taking too long to respond. After all, he couldn't see who it was without a spyglass from that distance, relying only on the feeling of danger as his guide. Boo swallowed hard before addressing his grandfather. They're the Straw Hats. And they're coming with the main ship, the Black Pearl, which means it's their captain himself, approaching. Boo informed with a shaken tone. Garp's grandson? Chinjo seemed furious at this. After all, the grandson of the man who had shattered his dreams with one punch was now approaching. We must flee. Grandpa, we need to go back, we can't fight them. Boo exclaimed, clearly terrified. Who was Monkey D? Luffy, appearing in the newspapers since the East Blue, and what did he represent? Everyone knew well enough, and except for the world government, the Navy, and the Yonko, no one could stand against them. No. Chinjo suddenly spoke, making Boo look at him, confused by what his grandfather meant by that. Let our ships prepare to fight them. Chinjo decided, letting his rage cloud his judgment, driven by the desire for revenge against Monkey D. Garp, believing he could defeat Monkey D. Luffy to settle the score. Boo stared at his grandfather in disbelief, then ordered an attack against the Straw Hats as if he had completely lost his mind, while the Black Pearl continued to approach. Thanks to Sai's orders, the Happo fleet also began preparing, turning their ships. Hey, what's going on? The people from the kingdom carrying the money noticed the movement of the ships around them, preparing for a fight. They began to wonder who was out there and if it could be rebels from their kingdom, trying to steal the king's money. Is there a problem? Sai approached Boo, who was visibly shaken. Take this, brother, see for yourself. Boo handed the spyglass to Sai, who raised it and looked toward the ship, becoming just as stunned as his brother. This is terrible, Grandpa. We can't fight them. Sai declared, frowning. Don't be a coward like your brother, Sai. They're coming for us, and you know it's only a matter of time before their ship reaches us. And if they want to fight, then let's give them one. It's time for me to show Garp a taste of what he made me lose. Shinjo spoke with confidence, believing he could handle Monkey D. Luffy, or rather, make Garp suffer, already imagining the Navy hero crying in a corner, uttering words of regret for making him lose the point on his head that one day. The Straw Hat ship continued to approach the fleet, and their flag finally became visible to everyone. This quickly made the entire fleet, including Shinjo's grandsons, realize that this was the ship of a Yonko, filling them with fear. The once confident movements of the Happo Navy crew began to falter as they questioned whether they should fight against that ship. But the only one still confident was Shinjo, who grew angry at his group for cowardly backing down so easily. He grabbed Sai's Den Mushi. Stop trembling. We are the Happo Navy. We will not retreat from these pirates. Follow me, and we will destroy them. Shinjo declared with determination. Meanwhile, the ship from the kingdom was completely stunned, desperate to get out of there as quickly as possible. They're insane for wanting to fight that pirate crew. What have we gotten ourselves into? Now we're in the middle of a battle, and we're going to die because of it. The men from that country were far from pleased with the situation, witnessing one of the New World's hurricanes appear before them, bringing misfortune as the Happo Navy seemed intent on facing them. On the Straw Hat ship, Luffy was still at the edge of the deck, gazing at the Happo Navy as the Black Pearl naturally sailed toward them. Nami and Vivi were taking a bath inside the ship. Shirahoshi opened the kitchen door at that moment as she approached, accompanied by Lucy, whose belly was enormous after eating so much takoyaki that Hachi had prepared. Hachi followed closely behind the pair as they headed toward the deck. Shirahoshi was the first to reach Luffy, swimming through the air until she caught up with the captain and hugged him from behind. "You smell like sex," she murmured into his ear. "Are you surprised?" Luffy responded with a grin. "I know you were aware of everything happening on the deck." "True, but someone had to keep your sister and Hachi in the kitchen. Anyway, I hope to be rewarded for that tonight." She spoke in a seductive tone. "Of course, you know it's my duty as your husband to attend to you, my lovely wife," Luffy said with a small smile. "So they are the Happo Navy?" Lucy asked as she approached her brother, looking curiously at the group of ships. "Yes, that's right," Luffy commented while the ship seemed to be preparing for his arrival. "It seems they are braver than I thought. Maybe Shinjo is more stubborn than I imagined." Luffy smiled at that, not knowing exactly what was happening, but he could certainly sense, through his observation haki, that the enemies were prepared to face them, even though many of them were scared. Sai and Boo stood behind their grandfather, who was at the bow of the ship, watching Luffy's fearsome ship approach. Suddenly, the advancing ship stopped a few dozen meters ahead, with Luffy using his Moa Moa no Mi on it, surrounded by cannons from all the ships pointing at them. As Luffy moved to the edge of the ship, Nami and Vivi finally emerged from the ship after washing up, tending to their wet hair. Luffy took a few steps forward and stared at the man who was looking at him with a certain coldness. "Garp's grandson," Shinjo murmured as Luffy raised his arm to greet him, while he stood out from everyone else. Both on the ship and on the others around it, everyone was frightened and cautious in the presence of Monkey D. Luffy. "Yes, I'm Garp's grandson. And you, Shinjo, by the way you're looking at me, do you want to fight?" Luffy asked with a smile. "Yes. I'm going to get revenge for what your grandfather did," Shinjo said, while running his hand over his head, still feeling the void where the symbol of his strength once was, the drill that could break anything, even the treasure he had hidden in nearly unbreakable ice. This was the reason for Shinjo's deep hatred toward Garp and his family. "Grandpa, I think we should reconsider this," Sai murmured beside him, but Shinjo didn't care, ignoring him while Luffy's smile grew wider. "Well, this is interesting," Luffy commented. "After all, I'm going to make you join my fleet by the end of the day," Luffy declared, surprising everyone. "Join your fleet? Don't be ridiculous." Shinjo, hearing the most absurd thing he could have imagined, exclaimed, and suddenly unleashed his conqueror's haki directly at Luffy, trying to intimidate him. Wind and energy crackled across his ship, while the other ships around them trembled, with Chinjo clearly enraged. HM? He's serious. Lucy murmured in surprise, completely unfazed by the Conqueror's haki, just like the other members of Luffy's crew, who could easily handle it. For Luffy, it was merely a breeze. He looked at Chinjo, his eyes glowing even redder, and suddenly exploded with his own Conqueror's haki. Quickly, Luffy's haki began to dominate the area, overpowering Chinjo's, who struggled to stay firm, shocked by this. Everyone around quickly realized Chinjo was losing control. Sai and Boo were stunned as they felt Luffy's haki strike them, making them fall to their knees, terrified. Only Chinjo managed to remain standing, trying to resist, while the entire Happo Navy fleet began collapsing, one by one, across the other ships. What? In the end, only Chinjo and his two grandsons, who were kneeling, remained conscious. Chinjo was clearly stunned but still enraged, blinded by his desire for revenge. Luffy, meanwhile, smiled even wider. As I said, you'll be part of my fleet by the end of this day, Luffy declared. Chapter 413, Happo Navy 02. Third-person POV. New word. You're dreaming, kid. I'm going to give you a beating. Chinjo said with a dark tone. We don't have much to talk about, so I'm just going to give you a beating, and I might even fix your head if I like you. Luffy declared as he advanced, disappearing from the ship's bow the next moment, heading toward the other ship. Don't underestimate me. You'll regret it. Chinjo leaped forward, charging at Luffy blindly, while his grandsons watched, not knowing what to do, still kneeling. What should we do, brother? Boo murmured to Sai. What else can we do? We can't even move, and Grandpa's mind is clouded by his vengeance. Sai murmured, knowing full well that they were pretty much screwed. Luffy smiled in midair as he advanced toward Chinjo, leaping toward him in the middle of the sea. The next moment, an explosion between the two fists erupted as they connected, sending out a burst of Conqueror's haki. The clash of their haki even distorted the world, changing its colors to blue as they continued trying to overpower each other. This guy really hates Grandpa. Luffy murmured, handling him easily, but the man in front of him stood firm due to his desire for revenge, even being irrational. The impact favored Luffy easily as Chinjo found himself thrown back, before crashing into the ship, creating an explosion in the midst of his grandsons with his own body. Sai and Boo were sent flying away as they fell off the ship from the impact, but two hands stretched out, grabbing each of them from both sides of the Black Pearl. Lucy stretched out her hands, pulling them onto her ship, preventing them from falling into the water, still paralyzed by the Conqueror's haki of her brother, while Luffy landed on the main ship of the Happo Navy. Chinjo, I won't understand this anymore, so let's just finish this. Luffy said calmly, looking at the hole. Damn you. Chinjo's voice emerged, breaking through the deck as he appeared once more, attempting to hit Luffy with his head, only for Luffy to vanish and reappear at his side. Chinjo tried to punch him, but Luffy jumped into the air, stabilizing himself above the ship, while Chinjo gave him a dark look, appearing frustrated. Chinjo, let's end this, send me your most powerful attack. Luffy said. Chinjo didn't respond, but his head was coated with armament haki, preparing to strike Luffy. Very well. Luffy said as his hand was also covered with haki, using only the first form of armament haki. In the next moment, both Chinjo on the deck of the ship and Luffy in the air charged at each other, closing the distance the next second. Fist and Chinjo's almost oval head collided once again, creating a shockwave of two armament hakis clashing. Ha ha ha. This guy is so funny. I've never seen someone use their head to fight. Lucy laughed, watching Luffy clash against Chinjo's head, while Chinjo seemed to be pushing himself harder than he could handle. Why doesn't Luffy just finish this already? Nami murmured, still drying herself with her hand, generating wind like a hairdryer. He doesn't seem like he's going to drag this out much longer. Shirahoshi said as the entire crew, along with Sai and Boo, who were paralyzed beneath Lucy, watched the contest. Suddenly, Luffy's fist began sinking into Chinjo's head, leaving everyone surprised. Nay. Is the captain planning to kill him? But he was supposed to be a potential ally, wasn't he? Hachi murmured, quite shocked. Grandpa. Both grandsons grew worried as they saw Luffy's punch starting to crush Chinjo's head. But what they apparently expected didn't happen, because as Luffy's punch sank into the upper part of his head, the lower part began to grow, until his skin became pointed, regaining the original shape Chinjo had in the past. Wait! The collective, stunned shout was heard from everyone still conscious. Chinjo lost consciousness the next moment, as his eyes turned white, and he slammed the tip of his head straight into the deck. The next moment, the ship cracked with the impact, shattering from just the touch of Chinjo's pointed head. What? The most surprised were his grandsons, Sai and Boo, staring in shock as the ship broke apart with Chinjo and the other crew members still unconscious from Luffy's haki. Luffy left the ship behind and headed back to the Black Pearl, seeing that the fight was over. Hachi and Nami, can you get everyone out of the sea? He asked. Hachi dove in to retrieve Chinjo, who had sunk into the ocean due to the impact from Luffy, while Nami created giant claws to place the floating people onto another ship. Hachi brought Chinjo and placed him with the other crew members on the other ship, while Sai and Boo remained silent and somewhat fearful, still on the Black Pearl. Well, it seems your main ship was destroyed. Now you can go back to taking care of your grandpa and the others. We'll wait for your grandpa to wake up and see what we'll do. Luffy declared, as Sai and Boo quickly left the ship, casting cautious glances. It's over already? That was fast. Vivi commented. Yeah. I'm sure that guy will come crying and thanking me for what I just did. I reversed what my grandpa did to him. Luffy said before yawning. I think I'll take a nap and a bath for now. I'm heading to my room, Luffy said in conclusion. Everyone watched Luffy leave, while even Shirahoshi followed him silently. Vivi and Nami knew full well what they were going to do, but they didn't mind them being intimate in the meantime. After all, they had already had their moments with Luffy before. It was only 2 hours later when Luffy emerged from the room, leaving Shirahoshi in a deep sleep with a satisfied smile on her face, as he left his wife behind, sensing that almost the entire Happo Navy was conscious again. He stepped onto the deck and found his sister, his wives, and Hachi there, doing a few hobbies and passing the time, indifferent to the thousands of fearful stares from the dozens of ships in front of them. The Happo Navy was now fully aware of what had happened, and it didn't make them excited in the least to know that they had all been taken down by the haki of a Yonko. They could have died without resisting if that had been Luffy's will. It only worsened when they learned that their leader, Chinjo, had been easily defeated by Luffy, while his head had returned to being pointed again. They were stunned, surprised, and frightened at the same time. There were doubts and an indecisive atmosphere among them, wondering what their fate would be, as their lives were now in the hands of the Straw Hats. No one dared to raise their cannons or weapons. They simply waited for Chinjo to wake up, while his grandsons tended to him. But it was at that moment that someone emerged from the deck of the ship where Chinjo was. It was Chinjo himself, now with his pointed head, opening the door with a serious expression, while his grandsons watched cautiously from behind him. Even the Straw Hats stopped what they were doing as Luffy stood on the deck, waiting for the man who was walking toward him, staring from afar. Chinjo leaped from that ship to the Black Pearl, landing on the deck in front of Luffy, as the entire crew observed in silence. Luffy remained silent as well, while the man stared at him, now without all the hatred and aggression he had before. He seemed to be analyzing Monkey D. Luffy. Then Chinjo decided to break the silence. Do you know what you've done to me? He said, as the atmosphere grew tense everywhere, with all eyes fixed on that point, waiting to see what would happen. I know exactly what I did, Luffy declared without any remorse. Good, Chinjo replied, keeping a serious face, but he soon began to melt as tears streamed down his eyes. Looking at Luffy, he exclaimed, "You brought my head back." The man burst into tears as he rushed toward Luffy, hugging him and lifting him off the ground, being taller than the captain of the Straw Hats, who was a bit stunned by this sudden affection. "You've restored my former glory. I'm so happy," Chinjo exclaimed. Everyone was dumbfounded by this crying version of Chinjo, revealing so much happiness for having his pointed head again, something priceless to him. Luffy stood there, turning his face with a frown, while the man hugged him, crying as if they were best friends. Being forced to push him away a bit, Chinjo stepped back, still crying. "Man, you don't have to be so sentimental. I already said I want you guys in my fleet, that's why I'm helping," Luffy said. Shinjo began wiping his tears as he returned to looking seriously at Luffy. "Alright, we will follow you," he simply said, leaving the entire Happo Navy stunned by this development. "Wait, Grandpa, you accepted just like that?" Sai and Boo, from a distance, couldn't believe what they had just heard, since their grandpa was quite stubborn. Despite this, they also knew they stood no chance if Luffy wanted to destroy them. But their grandpa was proud, and it seemed that Shinjo's head was more important than his own pride. "Well, that's good," Luffy said with a satisfied smile, realizing that it only took one punch to convince a large group to join his flag, further increasing his naval power. Some time later, Sai and Boo also went to the Black Pearl to accompany their grandpa, and they began discussing with Luffy about his plans now that their grandpa had joined this Yonko's fleet in an unexpected turn of events. "Well, I understand you're in the middle of a mission. So, we'll let you carry on with it. Just head to Dressrosa as soon as you're done. I'll be waiting for you there for an official meeting. You don't have to accept joining my fleet right now, I just want you to hear me out at my current headquarters along with the others," Luffy said, while they nodded, even though Shinjo had already accepted and declared his loyalty. "Alright," Shinjo said. "Good, see you in Dressrosa then." "I'll be waiting for you," Luffy said, and the three nodded before leaving the Black Pearl and returning to the Happo Navy. "Hachi, let's head back to Dressrosa and finally meet with the others," Luffy said, as Hachi took the helm and Nami plotted the course. The ship finally began its journey back to the starting point, where a war would soon begin, one that would rival what had happened in Marineford over a year ago. Chapter 414, Returning to Dressrosa. Third-person POV. New word. Ha ha ha. Very good. You all did a great job, Luffy declared as he stood on the deck surrounded by Den Den Mushi, communicating with all the members of his crew. Alvida, Bippo, Jimbei, and Frankie were returning from Zou with their mission to speak with the minks. Nojiko, Yuta, Chopper, and Usopp were bringing Cavendish, who was chained, while he exclaimed on the ship, demanding to be released. Before that, they had defeated and subdued Idio's pirate group. Baby 5, Perona, Enel, and Domino had gone to the Kingdom of Prudence, with the king confirming his meeting with Luffy in Dressrosa. Yamato, Nojiko, Bonnie, and Robin had overpowered the great Yanta Maria fleet, and its admiral was now heading to Dressrosa. Zoro, Kuina, Chaochu, and Brook had gone to Mihawk's home and retrieved some of the highly intelligent gorillas to add another special unit, even superior to the giant animals and dinosaurs. Lamy, Rebecca, Hugo, and Monet were already in Dressrosa, probably enjoying the city after easily dominating it and defeating all the members who still belonged to the deceased Shichibukai's crew. Now, Luffy, Shirahoshi, Lucy, Nami, Vivi, and Hachi were heading to Dressrosa as well, where they would all meet. All the missions each group had undertaken were a success, and Luffy just needed to convince each of these pirates to join his fleet. Another pleasing thought, in his opinion, was that Hadrudin himself was already trapped in Dressrosa as a toy, as Hugo had found him in the factory. Luffy hadn't heard from him, and Elbaf was not an easy country to get information from. So, Luffy hoped his crew would remember him again and come to rescue him. This would be an opportunity to have a group of giants, besides Broggy and Dory, in his fleet. Not to mention the fairies of Dressrosa, and Luffy could convince Leo to join the fleet, just like in the original story. All these members would be added, strengthening future battles. After all, Luffy didn't plan to deploy them in Wano, but he was excited about this. His fleet was more powerful than ever, and even without these newly added members, they would deliver a solid response to Kaido, even without needing the Red Scabbards who would appear in a year or the Wano army itself. He could hardly wait to see their faces when they found out Kaido had been defeated and Wano now belonged to Luffy's territories. After all, besides Wano being a strategic point, there were individuals he was interested in having by his side, and even his commitment to Yamato, his first companion, who wanted to fulfill Odin's will. Wano was also an ancient weapon, something he would have to acquire and probably use against the government, though he had prepared something similar with Enel on the moon, as he would have to help a hidden civilization there. His attention returned to the Den Den Mushies as everyone on the Black Pearl gathered around, also listening to the conversation. "Luffy, you've got to deal with this guy here. I have to keep knocking him down all the time. He just won't give up." Perona complained over one of the Den Den Mushies. This Thunder guy keeps getting back up every time. She continued, irritated. Enel was not at all happy about being taken down by Perona so easily, and he kept trying to challenge her, but always getting defeated. She had already placed her ghosts near him to constantly pass through him. The problem was that, on Noah's Ark, it was hard to control the ship's speed with Enel in this state. After all, he was the one providing the necessary energy to keep the flying object suspended in the air. Yeah, he's just getting in the way. Domino grumbled. Master. I'll prepare a meal with an explosion of flavor. Baby 5 also exclaimed from the phone. This is bad. Luffy muttered, ignoring Baby 5's comment. This guy seems to have found someone of his level. It's better than watching him get beaten. Hugo said through another den mushy. Wolf wolf. Chaochu barked, mocking Enel. I'm not supposed to be a god. I'm just an amoeba. No, I must be an amoeba's poop. Enel's voice was heard, lamenting as he suffered an existential crisis. Ha 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 ha. What a funny guy. Lucy laughed behind Luffy at that. I think it's better if you help them, Luffy. Yamato murmured through another den mushy. I know. Luffy replied, already planning to do so. We'll meet in Dressrosa. Luffy then spoke as everyone began to hang up the den mushy. They stored them away before turning to those with him. I'll have to go help them, you all continue the journey. When you reach Dressrosa, I'll be there. Luffy said. Alright, we'll see you there, Vivi commented, while Nami nodded along with the others. Luffy didn't need to say anything more as he took out a Vivre card that belonged to Baby 5 and saw the direction. He then created his winged form with his black wings and blasted off from the deck, shooting into the sky. He accelerated, traveling faster than anything else in the New World. In Dressrosa, things had been improving greatly since the chaos began over a week ago. Lamy hung up the den mushy, sharing the room with Hugo, Rebecca, and Monet. The captain is coming here, soon we'll be rid of this boredom. Hugo commented as he began to leave the room. Luffy is coming. Rebecca smiled at that. Yes, but I have a feeling things won't stay peaceful in Dressrosa over the next few days. Lamy's voice was heard, her premonition of something unsettling bothering her since yesterday. Everyone remained silent, but clearly paid attention to her words. After that, they all left the room to attend to their duties, which they had been managing over the past few days. Hugo was speaking with the former prisoners, organizing the weapons factory and smile operations according to Luffy's instructions. Rebecca was having meetings in the court, where she was called upon by her grandfather, and her opinions carried some weight in the decisions for Dressrosa. Despite being only 15, she was both respected and feared due to her power. Everyone had seen how she destroyed the royal castle while transformed into a dragon in the skies of Dressrosa. Meanwhile, Monet was organizing the research that the Don Quixote family's scientists had been conducting, passing some information on to the Straw Hat scientists. She occasionally visited her sister, who was far from happy being imprisoned, but had little choice and nothing else to do besides complain to Monet. Rebecca, who was returning to the temporary residence provided by the royal family, was surprised by a tall woman in a dress, her eyes expressing anticipation. Any news about Luffy? She asked her niece. Yes. He's finally coming soon. Aunt. Rebecca smiled excitedly at Viola's question. After all, Viola constantly asked about the Straw Hat Captain. It was no surprise that the woman was in love with Luffy, even before meeting him over a year ago. She was eager to thank him after Dressrosa was saved. That's so good. I can't wait to see him. Viola exclaimed excitedly, trying to keep her eyes on the horizon, hoping to spot him coming from any direction, like a true stalker. Meanwhile, many things were converging on the waters around this kingdom. One of them was a somewhat well-known pirate group that had made a name for themselves over the past year, with a bounty of 200 million on their leader's head. A year ago, after Luffy picked up Rebecca from Dressrosa in the New World, he had set a challenge for them: if they survived a year in these treacherous seas, they would be allowed to join his fleet. Now, they eagerly awaited the chance to finally join the Straw Hat Fleet. But not everyone heading to Dressrosa was friendly. A marine ship was also approaching, with a blind man standing at its bow, feeling the sea breeze but unable to see it, as his eyes had been cut long ago by his own sword. Fujitora, however, didn't need vision, as his observation haki was at a level few could reach. Now, this ship was heading to Dressrosa, dispatched by the new marine headquarters to capture a member of the Straw Hat crew. Akainu intended to have something to use against them and defeat Monkey D. Luffy. This was the feeling Lamy had, that things wouldn't be so peaceful in Dressrosa anymore, as this admiral might not only bring down a meteor from the sky, maybe not as big as Bepo's, but would certainly cause chaos throughout the kingdom. Another ship approaching Dressrosa was one without a flag. Meanwhile, Sabo smiled eagerly as he looked out over the empty sea. "Koala, you're here," he said, seeing his companion approaching. "Yes, you're here all the time," she murmured to him. "Yeah, I can't wait to meet Luffy and Lucy, finally," Sabo commented. The ship was sailing alongside other revolutionaries who were on a mission to find the leader's son. Sabo had no idea that he would receive a great gift on this journey, one he never imagined, as Luffy had been holding onto an extra devil fruit all along, waiting for the right opportunity to give it to him. At an even greater distance, a boat was flying at high speed, approaching Dressrosa faster than any other Straw Hat ship. Luffy was sitting calmly in a ring-shaped chair, having boosted the speed of the boat several times by using his flames as thrusters, further increasing its velocity, while eating cookies that Baby 5 had given him, which exploded with every bite. Enel was tied up at the bow to avoid causing trouble during the journey, while the ship advanced at high speed. Everyone could feel it. Baby 5 was next to Luffy, her high heels locked into the floor after she created claws in it. Domino had her whip stretched out in front of the ship's mast to avoid falling due to the high speed. Meanwhile, Perona clung to the ship with great difficulty, crying, "Luffy! Stop this, when I asked for your help, I didn't mean for you to do something so extreme." "Help," she complained as she started falling off the ship. Luffy quickly grabbed her and put her back on his lap in the chair, and they continued at high speed. Soon, they would reach Dressrosa's territory. A day passed, and the marine ship arrived at the coast of Dressrosa, and the men guarding the port quickly went to inform King Riku about it. "There's a marine ship arriving," he was informed, looking surprised at his daughter, who was investigating the area with his granddaughter. Viola quickly used her powers to look through the walls toward the sea, where the ship was approaching. Then, a bit startled, she exclaimed, "There's an admiral coming here," she declared, leaving most people in the area stunned. Lamy was also there when she heard this and merely scoffed. "An admiral? Let's see what he wants," she said in a calm tone, while Rebecca nodded. They headed to the port. Hugo soon found out about this as well and went with them. In the end, an enemy had arrived in this country, and they would have to deal with him before Luffy's arrival. Chapter 415, This is Straw Hat Territory. Third-person POV. New word. Seems like we already have some reception, Fujitora murmured, looking at the port that was starting to fill with people. However, only a few of them seemed dangerous, their auras screaming through his observation haki. Lamy, Hugo, and Rebecca were approaching as people watched with curiosity, unaware of what would happen regarding the rumor of an admiral coming to Dressrosa. Why is the Navy showing up now? Questions began to arise from the crowd. When we were being kept under the Don Quixote family's lie, none of them showed up. Now that the country has been saved, they decide to appear? Another questioned, clenching his fists. It doesn't matter if it's an admiral, they are the Straw Hats. You saw how they brought the Marines to their knees. Someone else said. Yeah, even so, the Navy has a lot of nerve to come here after doing nothing for years, they're such shameless cowards. The crowd continued, as everyone focused on the approach of the Straw Hats towards the nearing ship. Seems like we're not welcome here. Fujitora could feel the emotions of the people. What did you expect? Someone behind him commented. I'm a bit surprised that you came. Sengoku-san. Fujitora couldn't help but remark. This is my duty, after all of this happened when I was leading the Navy. I see no reason not to come here to redeem myself with this country as well. Sengoku, who at that moment appeared as an older man with white hair, began to recall several Marines who came to this country to investigate some disappearances in the records, only to be turned into toys and forgotten, further increasing the strange records. Sengoku couldn't help but frown at this. After all, he too was responsible, and when he heard that an admiral was coming here on a ship, he joined him and came along. Sengoku was technically retired, but in reality, he was at the new HQ training new recruits, something similar to what Zeph did. However, the latter left the Navy a year ago, and no one knows what he's doing now. The ship approached the edge of the port as the Marines began to slow it down, stopping in front of everyone, while the three Straw Hats stood at the forefront of the gathering crowd. The people made way for King Riku himself, who appeared and approached the Straw Hats. Everyone just watched as a figure walked with a cane to the edge of the ship and jumped off, landing in front of them. Landing calmly, another person descended beside him, while the Marines began to lower the gangway from the ship, hastily disembarking to accompany their superiors. Everyone stood in silence, staring at each other, as King Riku walked past the Straw Hats and advanced towards the arriving group. "What do you want in Dressrosa?" He didn't seem very happy after everything that had happened. "We came to check on the country. After all, there were even Marine prisoners here." Fujitora spoke in a calm tone. "You haven't come here in the past years for that. If you wanted the prisoners, you could have just sent a Marine ship, not a military force." He spoke to the admiral in a dark tone. "Dressrosa still belongs to the world government. King Riku." Sengoku was the one to speak from the side. "You expect that to remain after a Shichibukai enslaved this country?" he exclaimed, while the Straw Hats remained silent, except for Rebecca, who looked a bit nervous as this was her country. Her father, Kairos, landed beside her, having come as soon as he heard about the arrival of the Marines. What they expected, that the Marines would simply argue that they had no responsibility, was frustrated because suddenly, everyone widened their eyes in the next moment. A Marine admiral had simply let his cane fall, dropping to his knees, bowing before King Riku and everyone in Dressrosa. "I'm sorry for this." Fujitora pressed his forehead to the ground at that moment. Everyone was left speechless at this. Sengoku saw this without showing surprise, taking a step forward in the next moment and falling to his knees as well. "I also apologize for everything that happened in this country, especially since I was the one managing the Navy," he declared. King Riku was quite stunned by this. "I must admit, to do this, they must have a lot of courage," Hugo commented. "Rise, your apologies have been accepted." Riku nodded, a bit embarrassed by this, unable to deny the courage of recognizing the Navy's mistake, even though this admiral had only recently joined the Navy and was taking responsibility for what happened in Dressrosa years ago. They nodded while the other Marines gathered around the two as they got up, but King Riku wasn't finished. "However, with what this country has suffered, we have no reason to remain part of the world government," he made clear. "You might reconsider. We are developing a plan to dismantle the Shichibukai group at the next summit of world government countries," Sengoku said. "We can no longer be part of the organization that enslaved us and nearly led Dressrosa to its end." King Riku argued, while his people seemed to agree with his words. "You know you can't withdraw from the world government, King Riku. The world government will never forgive Dressrosa, and..." Sengoku continued, before looking at the three present Straw Hats. "You can't leave Dressrosa in the hands of a pirate group that is destined to be destroyed." He spoke in a dark tone. "This guy underestimates us," Lamy commented, raising an eyebrow. "How can they say something like that? It was these pirates who helped us. Don't mock us, Navy." Several people exclaimed from the crowd, not liking Sengoku's words at all. "I won't accept that, Lord Sengoku. Even if you don't like the Straw Hats, they were the only ones along with my granddaughter who fought to finally liberate Dressrosa. It wasn't the Navy or the world government, so remember that." King Riku maintained a regal posture, speaking firmly, before making an official declaration to the world. Until now, there were only rumors and guesses, but now it was official. "Dressrosa is Straw Hat territory," he said, making his voice echo across the port. The echo continued for a while as people watched curiously, except for the Marines who looked stunned. Hey, is he really doing this?" they exclaimed, not believing what they heard. They can't be serious. To put such a big and important country under a pirate's flag, Yonkou or not? What will the Admiral and Sengoku-san do? And they had a point in their questions because Sengoku was the one who spoke at that moment. "Do you know what you're saying, King Riku?" he growled. "Yes." King Riku seemed resolute. "Do you wish to become an enemy of the world government? Take it from me, the world government is not happy with the way the world is now. They will begin acting much harsher against their enemies. I'm saying this for Dressrosa's sake," he spoke in a dark tone while beside him, Fujitora remained silent. "You underestimate the captain of the Straw Hats, they can guarantee our protection, so yes, Dressrosa will disband from the world government," he declared. "It seems there's nothing we can do about it, after all, it's our fault that things have come to this," Fujitora finally commented. Then he took a step forward. "It's all right, King Riku, you have every right to take this path," he declared, surprising everyone who expected some resistance from the Navy. "However, we are the Navy, and we're here for more than just apologizing to Dressrosa. After all, there are some dangerous pirates here, and we are here to arrest them and bring them to justice," he simply declared, leaving everyone even more surprised, except for the calm Straw Hats. Finally, "I've never fought an admiral alone, so I'd like to see your strength," Hugo commented with a grin. "Whatever, but we can't fight here if they want to continue with this," Lamy said, and Rebecca nodded, knowing the destruction it would cause in Dressrosa. "You are right, Pirate Trafalgar Lamy," Fujitora replied. "That's why I'd like us to go to another island. I don't want to harm innocent people, even if it's to stop dangerous pirates for the entire world," Fujitora continued. "I know an island nearby, we can go there," Rebecca said, having seen a deserted island while traveling in her dragon form. "Guys." Someone approached them, it was Monet, joining the group as well. "Monet, it'd be good if you stayed here, after all, we'll be facing two powerful enemies, it's better if someone takes care of Dressrosa for now," Lamy said, and Monet nodded in agreement. "Let's go then, lead the way," Hugo requested, and Rebecca nodded as she jumped into the air. "Rebecca, wait." Kairos quickly tried to follow his daughter. "Wait." Hugo placed a hand on his shoulder. "It's better if you stay to take care of Dressrosa, we need strong people here, and your daughter is strong enough to take care of herself," he said. Kairos remained silent, but eventually nodded, trusting that his daughter would be fine. With that, Lamy followed Rebecca, and Hugo jumped into the air shortly after. Fujitora and Sengoku, seeing this, also jumped into the air, leaving their marines and ships behind as they distanced themselves from the port and the kingdom, following the pink-haired girl towards a deserted island in the middle of the sea. Meanwhile, Luffy was on Enel's ship, with Enel now sitting on his bed. "It's good to see you behaving, don't try to attack our comrades without a challenge again, otherwise, you'll get beaten again," Luffy said with a smile, while Enel, beaten up with black eyes and missing teeth, could barely click his tongue. The ship continued heading towards Dressrosa, with Luffy still unaware of what was happening there. Elsewhere, the Black Pearl stopped alongside other pirate ships. Luffy had sent the two-piece crew to fight against other pirate groups as training, but they had all ended up beaten by New World pirates. Now, Nami, Vivi, Lucy, and Hachi were rescuing this group that Luffy had some attention to, not really understanding what was special about them. "What a hassle, there are no doctors on the ship, so you'll have to hold on until we get to Dressrosa," Nami said in a dissatisfied tone, while Hachi picked up most of them with his arms after they defeated all the enemy pirates. "How funny." Lucy laughed at them. Back in Dressrosa, the Marines who had stayed behind were passing information to the command. "I see, well, this could be used as an opportunity," Akaino commented on the other end of the line, starting to put his mind to work in his treacherous schemes, seeing an opportunity at this moment, taking advantage of the fact that the Straw Hat crew was fragmented, with reports of various members acting in different areas of the New World. Chapter 416 Luffy's Arrival. Third-person POV. New word. Luffy. There's a battle happening near Dressrosa. Monet's voice came from the other side of the line as she relayed the information about what was happening. So they've already appeared in Dressrosa. That was faster than I predicted. Luffy murmured, looking at the situation. What do you plan to do, Master? Baby 5 approached him. We have no choice. Luffy said, looking at Enel. I want you to put maximum speed into this barge, Luffy requested before creating black wings on his back. I'll be faster kicking the air and flapping my wings at multiplied speed than trying to put everything into just this barge, Luffy spoke. After all, dealing with Fujitora and Sengoku didn't seem too difficult, but Dressrosa could also be attacked, and that was something Luffy didn't want, knowing how Akainu could still be treacherous. The next moment, everyone saw Luffy shoot off like a bullet, disappearing with an echo in the air. Boom. The sound of him tearing through the sky was almost surreal, reminiscent of what happened in Marineford. Even Enel, who had observation haki with a range of kilometers, quickly lost track of Luffy. The wind was generated in the next moment as the barge shook with the distortion in the space. Hey, that was dangerous! Perona exclaimed, clinging to the ship's wooden rail. In Dressrosa, people could feel the battle happening even at that distance, while the sky was lit up with streaks of red light falling toward the ground. Is that The people of Dressrosa pointed at the sky. King Riku had a shocked look. It can't be. Viola didn't need much effort to see where that thing was falling from the sky. Rebecca! Kairos exclaimed. That's a meteor. A citizen shouted, trembling. How is that possible? The exclamations in Dressrosa continued as the meteor descended from the atmosphere, cutting through the air and generating a wave across the sea along its path, until it fell beyond the horizon, out of sight of everyone on the island, but clearly close by. Then the explosion happened, lighting up the horizon even in the middle of the day, as the explosion occurred moments later with a piercing sound, followed by the shockwave rushing across the sea. What is happening there? How can they fight like this? That was the question on everyone's mind, hoping their saviors were all right, even as they fought against the Marines. The Marines at the port were not very different from the kingdom's people as they watched everything with a certain caution. On the island, an explosion from the meteor's impact swept everything away, and both Hugo, Lamy, and Rebecca were stunned by it coming down in their direction, trying to shield themselves from the attack, while Fujitora and Sengoku moved out of range, and not even Lamy could change the trajectory of something so powerful. As soon as the meteor made contact with them, an explosion swept through everything, with part of the island disappearing, debris and fire flying everywhere, and a massive cloud of smoke appearing moments later. They're quite resilient. Fujitora commented with a narrowed gaze, knowing with his haki that his attack hadn't quite succeeded. Because in the midst of the explosion, as the smoke began to dissipate, a massive body emerged before them. The shadow started to take shape, and Hugo, transformed into a titan, was there amidst the rocks, almost buried between the flames. His entire body was covered in armament haki, a giant, dark figure. That thing is strong enough to withstand even a meteor. Fujitora murmured, sensing with his haki from a distance what was happening. He's able to manifest throughout his entire body. Sengoku commented, observing the massive form of the Titan. Unlike what happened in Marineford, it seemed he had gained some new abilities. It was understandable that they were surprised. Even the always calm Fujitora kept a serious expression on his face. Their enemies were not easy to deal with. The Titan began to move its head, lifting it as it looked menacingly at the two before bending its knees and starting to rise, pushing away all the rocks around it, while Rebecca and Lamy were below, watching everything calmly. They had reached the island, and as soon as they were about to start fighting, Admiral Fujitora made his move, bringing a meteor down from the sky, leaving everyone stunned. But Hugo was quick to protect everyone with his armament haki, covering his companions. Well, they may have taken the initiative, but now I won't just stand still. Lamy murmured with a determined look as she began to draw her sword from its sheath. Rebecca nodded beside her, grabbing her medieval sword, starting to walk with Lamy as her body transformed into pink scales, entering her hybrid form. Sengoku also sprang into action. His entire body began to glow as he entered his full Buddha form, ready to fight his opponents. Here they come. Fujitora commented. And in the next moment, the two girls shot forward, while Hugo advanced with his massive feet, passing them as his steps cracked the ground while he ran in his Titan form. Sengoku, without hesitation, also moved forward, taking the lead from his admiral, as the debris around him from what was left on the island cracked and shattered with their approach. Even though Sengoku was 5 times smaller than Hugo, he acted without fear, and they faced each other, their fists wrapped in haki, preparing to attack one another. The next moment, the space exploded as both fists collided, using the power of their devil fruits, turning the space into a rain of armament lightning as everything around was destroyed. With Rebecca and Lami following behind, Lami raised her hand, creating a field that quickly grabbed Rebecca, and they vanished as rocks slammed into where they had been, controlling the atmosphere around them, and maneuvering past the two clashing in their battle of fists, avoiding the rising debris. Once they managed to get past the two, Lami and Rebecca went for the admiral, who had been standing still the entire time, as he withdrew his sword from his cane, preparing for his opponents. Lami appeared above Fujitora, advancing with a slash, while Rebecca approached from the side. In the next moment, Fujitora struck with his blade against Lami's and Rebecca's at the same time, managing to stop both of them. "You certainly are young and know how to wield a sword, but that won't be enough," Fujitora said. "Don't flatter yourself," Rebecca retorted, while Lami only scoffed at the admiral's comment. The next moment, Lami vanished and reappeared beside Fujitora, surprising him. He quickly used his gravity power several times, making everyone feel the force, slowing them down. "This guy," Lami murmured, struggling to reach him in the heavy field. Rebecca took action, her blade suddenly igniting with dragon power. Even Fujitora frowned, knowing what was about to happen. An explosion erupted point-blank over him. Rebecca and Lami disappeared and reappeared at a distance, while the explosion tore through the entire area with Rebecca's fruit power. Fujitora appeared sometime later amidst the flames, not in as good condition as he was at the start. His clothes were burned, and his arm was exposed, with burns. "I see I underestimated you. There are more powerful pirates in your crew than I imagined." He spoke, having heard much about the Straw Hats, but never read a report on them. Even he couldn't witness the war. After all, it's not possible to effectively read a transmission screen using haki. Sengoku and Hugo finally stopped their clash. Both moved to opposite sides, dragging the ground, staring at each other seriously. Even without using his full power, the impact of Sengoku managed to compensate for the size difference between him and Hugo, but Sengoku could do much more than that. While Hugo relaxed his hand due to the slight pain from the clash before advancing again, Sengoku prepared himself, using his palms. The next moment, the battle started again, and titanic explosions shook every side. The fight generated explosions everywhere as Lami and Rebecca fought with Fujitora in a sword battle, and the Titan was thrown back by Sengoku as he began to infuse Conqueror's haki into his blows. Meanwhile, something was happening in Dressrosa. Someone from the Marines appeared uninvited during this fight. "What is that bastard doing here?" King Riku said, looking at the debris scattered throughout the city since the fight began. A giant tree fought against a snowy wind as Monet tried to face the second current admiral of the Marines, who had been sent directly by Akainu to capture one of the Straw Hat members. "It's a shame your crew isn't here. I wanted to get better revenge for the huge trouble they gave me last time. I had to stay submerged in the sea for 3 months because of it. I can't get my revenge on them now, but you certainly won't have an easy time, no matter how much of a kitty you are," Green Bull said as Monet growled, trying to bring down his forest while the area turned into a snowstorm to combat him. However, he continued creating roots and plants, easily surviving the low temperatures, as his Logia was much more effective than the snow. Monet couldn't inflict significant damage on him and was growing weaker. It didn't take long for everyone to witness Monet falling to the ground, defeated. Green Bull nodded in satisfaction while Kairos and the other soldiers were all defeated, even Leo and other fairies. No one could take him down. Green Bull simply reverted his transformation, looking satisfied while many in Dressrosa were frustrated as he moved forward to capture the green-haired woman and take her to HQ as a prisoner. However, at that moment, his gaze turned upwards, and he immediately jumped back just before an explosion occurred. The impact was so strong that it shattered the entire area, even cracking the city. People were terrified as the ground exploded beneath their feet, and the entire island seemed to shake slightly. You Marines never learn. And I'll make sure you don't have an easy time here, Green Bull. Luffy spoke with a furious look as he unleashed his haki. What? Green Bull was stunned for a moment as everyone, even from a distance, could feel the presence of the powerful haki. Chapter 417, Blazing Comet Punch. Third-person POV. New word. You showed up after all, that was faster than I expected. Aramaki murmured with a not very pleasant expression. And in the next moment, without warning, a burst of haki impacted the entire area coming from Luffy, while an explosion of electricity began sweeping everything around, with a strong wind pushing backward. The stunned admiral put his hand in front of his eyes, as the force of the haki almost threw him back, struggling to stay on his feet as all that haki was directed exclusively at him. The entire city was also struck by the force, as people screamed, surprised and scared by this sudden manifestation, trying to protect themselves. And the explosion didn't stop there. Within seconds, the entire kingdom was engulfed in yellow lightning, making the island tremble. Even from a distance, the lightning could be seen, the electricity changing the entire atmosphere. The haki was incredibly powerful, as it started to turn red, showing the anger of its user behind that manifestation. Amazing! Viola murmured, her eyes wide open as she watched Luffy directly with his devil fruit power. King Riku, next to his daughter, was shocked, his mouth agape at the power the Straw Hat represented, seeing him for the first time. Even during the fight between the Straw Hats, Fujitora, and Sengoku, which was happening intensely, everyone stopped at that moment, looking in that direction in surprise. Luffy? Lami murmured, standing a bit away from Fujitora amidst the destroyed terrain. He's here, but is he coming from Dressrosa? Rebecca asked, confused and even a bit worried, since this meant something was happening in the kingdom. What powerful haki! This is their captain. Fujitora murmured, feeling the manifestation of power coming from that direction. Through the vision of haki, power lines could be seen distorting the entire area on the horizon. Fujitora assumed it was the captain, due to the women's comments. Hugo, in his Titan form, said nothing, keeping his usual expression but with an attentive gaze toward the horizon. His opponent, Sengoku, clenched his teeth at that moment, with a startled look. That bastard! This haki is different from what he used at Marineford. It may not be as powerful as when he fought a Gorosei, but it's certainly much stronger than before. He's evolved his basic Conqueror's haki. How is that possible? Sengoku was genuinely worried, his face turning back to the same concerned expression he had when he was the former fleet admiral. Meanwhile, back at Dressrosa, the lightning continued manifesting, affecting the entire kingdom. Monet, who was lying on the ground, started to roll, being pushed by the energy. Leo! Luffy called out while keeping his eyes on Aramaki the entire time. Leo, who was near him trying to protect himself, his entire body injured after losing to the admiral, was surprised to hear his name. Yes? Leo responded cautiously. Take Monet, Luffy simply said. Leo saw the girl being thrown around and nodded without hesitation, even without knowing this stranger. Take her to a safe place, Luffy ordered, still staring at Aramaki. This haki is really strong, damn it. Aramaki commented in frustration and anger at being overpowered in this way. You know, you Marines think you can try to deceive us, but I didn't expect much from a man like Akaina now leading you. Your record of lies is quite extensive. Luffy spoke to the man, who was still trying to hold his ground before him. Aramaki said nothing this time. You think you can do what you did to Whitebeard, try to capture one of us without starting a war? Well, it doesn't matter now. I arrived in time before you did anything that would force me to kill the entire Marine force. Luffy spoke in an arrogant tone. Don't think so highly of yourself, brat. Aramaki was tired of being treated like a child by this pirate and exclaimed, irritated by his words. But in the next moment, he barely had time to react. As soon as he finished speaking, a punch hit him before he could defend himself, so strong that the space around him distorted, shattering everything. Aramaki was thrown backward, crashing through buildings and being hurled out of the city in an instant, exploding against the rocks outside Dressrosa. People screamed in fear, seeing the buildings being destroyed quickly as they ran through the streets, unable to see anything of what was happening. Kairos was crouched nearby, looking stunned at where Luffy had landed after the hockey-infused punch. Over the past year, he had seen a lot of Luffy's strength, but he had never seen his full power. To launch an admiral across the entire kingdom was something he never expected a human could do. In the end, Luffy took a step forward before disappearing, blasting off from the ground and leaving the city. Aramaki lay on the ground, coughing blood in a huge crater made by his body. Damn it! He broke my nose and my teeth. How am I supposed to date some of the marine girls now? He said in frustration but froze, feeling a shadow standing behind him. I think your biggest concern right now should be getting out of here alive, not whether the women will find you handsome or not. Luffy's voice was heard. When Aramaki turned around, he was hit again. Quickly, all the rocks around were shattered by his body as he was propelled toward the sea. Just as he was about to touch the waters, unable to do anything, he felt time stop, his figure turning into static. I don't think I'll let you be saved by the sea again, do you? Luffy appeared beside him before delivering a point-blank punch to his back, essentially breaking several bones with the impact of haki, making Aramaki shoot into the sky, roaring in pain. The admiral, tired of being beaten, despite feeling immense pain from the various damages inflicted on his body, turned around, trying to play his last cards to survive. With a scream, he expanded his body until it turned into a large tree, with multiple branches in the middle of the sky, as Luffy's punch had sent him through the clouds. Luffy saw that and realized he was trying to avoid being attacked like that, but using a great deal of energy. So be it, he murmured, mocking it. Then Luffy sighed before clenching his fist, and flames began to grow as he pulled his arm back at an angle, creating a wave of Conqueror's haki and armament haki, and everything lit up in that area with his chaotic flames. His fist was ready to release the attack he had learned during a year of training. Luffy prepared, looking seriously at the giant tree in the sky, and simply thrust his fist forward, punching the air. Chaos flames, blazing comet! He exclaimed. The light of the flames was so intense that it shone like a sun over the sea. He launched an attack that ended up mimicking the force of his grandfather, making an explosive sound as a wave of force spread around his fist. Then he generated an explosion of flames that flew, growing and growing until it was over 200 meters in diameter, shooting toward the sky so quickly that Aramaki had to close his eyes due to the intense brightness. Seeing that, stunned, the admiral tried to generate a forest in the air, using all his strength and energy to try to protect himself from those flames. However, even creating a forest 1 kilometer thick between himself and the blow, the intensity of the chaotic flames overshadowed everything ahead. The moment the flames made contact with his created forest, it simply began to vanish, consumed by the chaotic flames down to the atoms, leaving not even ashes. Quickly, the flames began consuming everything, and Aramaki could only watch, powerless, being the target. He didn't even have time to react as he felt his body burn. His tree form disappeared as he was launched by the force of the impact, like an inverted meteor shooting into the sky. This? The daylight gave way to an amethyst hue like a filter on the world, as everyone in Dressrosa and even on the other island looked at a comet advancing toward the sky, perhaps not as grand as a year ago, but certainly incredible to see an admiral so close. He'll certainly fly far, but that won't be enough to kill him. Should I eliminate him still? Luffy stood still, radiating yellow and red haki, watching the spectacle in the sky, pondering for a moment before preparing to act again. But then he sensed a glow in the sky to his side and looked, surprised, as at that instant, meteors began to appear in the sky to his right, targeting him after following his trajectory. That guy, he really wants to protect his fellow admiral. Luffy murmured, watching the meteors created by Fujitora advancing in his direction. I've never used this ability against Bippo's greatest attack. Maybe today is a good opportunity to see if my attack can be as powerful as a giant meteor. Luffy commented. Fujitora had directed the meteors right after seeing his companion launched through the sky, and as Luffy predicted, he was trying to protect Aramaki. He aimed the attacks where Luffy stood, making it easy to track him as he continued generating haki, even while Fujitora fought against Lami and Rebecca. Luffy began to prepare. His fists were ready for something similar to what Whitebeard used to get into position to launch the Quake Fruit, mixing the posture of Garp's Punch, Galaxy Punch, Chaos Flames, Blazing Comet Punch. Once again, he unleashed one of the most powerful attacks in his arsenal. The comets advanced like large flames against the meteors, while everyone in Dressrosa witnessed the first contact between the two attacks in the next moment, given their extreme speed. A massive explosion began to form, generating a shockwave that shook all of Dressrosa. Everyone watched, wondering who would prevail, until both attacks cancelled each other out, with Luffy's flames extinguishing but not before completely destroying the meteor, leaving not even ashes as its matter was totally obliterated. However, there were still 6 meteors, so he began to fire 5 more times, generating comets into the sky, and witnessed his 6 blazing comet punches destroy the 6 meteors, with all of them being obliterated. After things calmed down, Luffy's gaze turned to the sky where Aramaki had disappeared. He wasn't sure if he would find Aramaki at this moment, so he ended up not going after him, as there was still a battle involving his companions happening in another area, with explosions heard on the horizon. Thus, he decided to give the Marines a taste of what they wanted with his crew and advanced to capture the Marine Admirals. Chapter 418, Starting Plans. Third-person POV. New word. Looks like things didn't turn out so well. Sengoku commented. Yes. The Fleet Admiral won't be pleased with this at all. Fujitora sighed beside him. I wonder how the Marines will get us out of this. Sengoku pondered. As I said, the Fleet Admiral won't be pleased with this. Fujitora repeated. Sengoku. Fujitora. Both were currently inside cages, their bodies covered in sea stone and other chains to prevent escape. After Luffy arrived on the island, things didn't go well for them. They were defeated with the Straw Hat pressing further into the fight. Fujitora's battle was difficult against the 2 women of the crew, and although Sengoku could have beaten Hugo, Luffy knocked him out as soon as he joined the fight and moved on to Fujitora shortly afterward. Now they were here, faces bruised and bodies battered, waking up in this prison in the middle of Dressrosa, with no one visiting them yet. Outside, things seemed much better. The destroyed part of the city had already been organized while the Straw Hats gathered in the establishment set up by the royal family to discuss matters. Ha ha ha. Really? That must have been funny, with all of them burning from your roar. Luffy said, looking at Rebecca with a smile. After all, she was recounting what happened when they came to Dressrosa, describing how she appeared in dragon form and attacked the castle. People were paying attention to Luffy this time. Even King Rika didn't interrupt his conversation with his companions to talk about Dressrosa, while the captain seemed at ease listening to his granddaughter. Yes. I really became strong, thanks to you. Rebecca murmured with a blush on her face. You are my precious companion, of course you'll get stronger. Luffy smiled and returned to his other companions who were also there, listening to him. Hugo and Lamy seemed fine as well, while Monet was laid on a stretcher to rest, unable to wake up since she fell. His gaze fell on the large man present. So, are the prisoners okay? You managed to talk to them, I believe that's why they stayed to fight, right? Luffy asked, looking at the large man, who nodded. Yes, they all agreed to talk with you as we discussed before. He spoke, and Luffy nodded. The men now freed from Sugar's devil fruit fought Admiral Aramaki, alongside Kairos and all the others, but fell when he invaded Dressrosa. Only Monet endured till the end, trying to resist the Admiral before Luffy arrived. That's good. I'll talk to them as soon as they wake up, and let's wait for the others too. After all, by the end of the day I'm sure some of us will get here, Luffy said, while Kairos and other members looked at him. But, at that moment, someone appeared by his side. It was Princess Viola herself, who looked expectant, bringing something for him to eat. Lord Luffy, I brought this for you. I hope you like it. I made it myself. She said with a smile, sitting beside him and looking at him expectantly. Luffy didn't mind the treatment and nodded, eating what the girl had prepared and liking it, even though it wasn't on Rage's level. Riku stood there watching Viola's behavior, which wasn't appropriate at all, but he just sighed at his daughter, openly showing her interest in Luffy. Now with him here, she was a woman hopelessly in love, with this feeling cultivated over a year. He then turned back to Luffy, standing by his daughter's side. Viola has always told me about your plans, Monkey D. Luffy, and Dressrosa is open to our saviors, and we will be part of your territory. But I still don't know your next plans. I would like to know what will happen to Dressrosa in a moment like this. He asked. It was a fair question, and Luffy nodded. Dressrosa will soon be involved with all my territory in these waters. Luffy said. What do you mean by that, Lord Luffy? Someone asked. Well, I haven't told this to Kairos and Rebecca. Luffy said, since they never attended important meetings of his crew, and nothing had been shared beforehand with the Dressrosa monarchy. My plan is to bring all my territories here and place them around Dressrosa, like a giant archipelago. We'll organize the place temporarily to establish a new world. He spoke, leaving Riku stunned by it. Wait, you're going to bring all those islands here? Kairos murmured, stunned. Exactly. People always said I was an emperor without territory and that I was just starting to create my own territory now. However, I've always been creating my own territories since I left the West Blues and have been conquering them, though I haven't touched any island in the West Blue. All those under the sky in paradise will come here. This will be a temporary base before we head to Wano and wage war. He declared. Well, if your territories are here, it would mean more allies to protect Dressrosa. Riku murmured, finding nothing wrong with it, as long as Dressrosa still maintained its sovereignty. Exactly, but soon we'll have more allies. My fleet will be ready soon, so let's wait for the others to arrive. Luffy said. I've stayed up for the last few days, I think I'll get some sleep. He declared, yawning, as he had some time. Why don't you sleep in my room? I have a very comfortable bed, as I'm a royal princess. Viola immediately exclaimed. After Luffy finished eating his biscuits, everyone sighed at this. Even Rebecca looked at her aunt, clearly wanting to take him to bed. Well, Luffy was thinking, so he ended up going, but with the intention of sleeping, not dipping another biscuit, or so he thought. Hours passed, and on that same day as Luffy predicted, 3 groups arrived. One of them was Enel, who reached Dressrosa, coming from one direction and stopping in the middle of the city with Perona, Baby 5, and Domino disembarking from the ship as Enel landed somewhere in the city. What? This really happened? Baby 5 was desperate and was not happy at all to hear that someone had given Luffy biscuits like a maid, immediately starting to threaten Princess Viola. Why did she do that to the master? He can't fall into her trap. I doubt it, he's already sleeping in her room. Lami said calmly, already expecting this. He went to sleep in her room. Baby 5 said, crying, wanting to go there immediately. I think she can have the master for herself, I'll show her who the real maid is, she grumbled while the others just looked at Baby 5's behavior, shaking their heads. Womanizer! Womanizer! Perona joined in with Baby 5, cursing Luffy and throwing a tantrum. The second group came from the horizon while the people at the port began to exclaim as a huge golden ship approached, the Grand Tesoro itself slowly advancing toward Dressrosa and anchoring nearby. Meanwhile, Tesoro waited to contact Luffy first to see if he could enter the city. The third group was the people from Zou with Bippo, Frankie, Alvida, Jinbe, Pedro, and Carrot approaching at that moment, while Luffy already noticed their presence with a smile. Bippo was crucial for him to start his next steps, as he had to move the islands of Skypiea, so Luffy finally got up after resting for a few hours, adjusting his pants and leaving the princess asleep in bed, naked with a solemn expression. Well, he really wanted to rest, but the moment he saw the princess on top of him trying to seduce him with her large breasts, he didn't refuse and had sex with her for a few hours before finally sleeping. It seemed that Viola had held onto this emotion for a year, and finally, upon reuniting with him, she wanted to release that energy. They ended up having a moment of wild sex. Luffy left the room and found Hugo outside, as he was about to ask for a favor. Hugo, go to the Grand Tesoro and tell them to come here, he said. The man nodded while jumping with Jeppo, and Luffy nodded, knowing he needed a meeting by the end of that night with everyone, needing to leave with Jeppo later that same night. He first went to talk to the giant and some other former prisoners who had been toys. There were many things to take care of now as the fleet and territory leader. So, he began handling one thing at a time until starting the territory plan with Beppo. Elsewhere, Akainu was having a heated discussion on the Den Den Mushi. I did what I did because we can't let these pirates do whatever they want in the New World. Akainu exclaimed, speaking in a harsh and rigid tone, even though Agoracii was on the other end of the line. You were reckless, Akainu. You know that this group shouldn't be taken down with just a few admirals, even if 3 of them were sent to capture a member without their captain. And even without the captain, we ended up facing a severe situation, the voice on the other end exclaimed, clearly displeased with the development, and continued. You should know that he can travel at high speed across the sea and reach any crew member in danger in no time. You were a fool. You put the marine forces in an uncertain plan without considering all the risks. He spoke with a voice full of disappointment. I am the fleet admiral. I have to take risks to make justice work. Akainu exclaimed, slamming his fist against his head in anger. Yes, you are the fleet admiral, and look at what this has cost us. We have an admiral hospitalized, another captured, and even Sengoku along with Fujitora imprisoned by Straw Hat, and we don't know what will happen to them. We can't move a large force like that to stop them and recover the prisoners. Now I want you to find a solution, even if you have to contact them and negotiate. Do you understand, Akainu? The voice spoke before disconnecting the Den Den Mushi, leaving Akainu alone with his rage in that room, frustrated by yet another failure against that group. He had to find some way to actually recover the prisoners, and now he only had Kizaru. Maybe he would have to use Garp. Chapter 419, Ueno's Situation. Third-person POV. New word. I want you to settle in these waters for now. I don't care if you receive clients, but I don't want you enslaving anyone else in debt, so cancel all the loans you offer your clients. Luffy spoke in front of Tesoro and his main crew, sitting in King Riku's chair as he began addressing his companions one by one. Yes. Tesoro replied without objection. You can go now, Luffy said, needing to speak to other members of the fleet. There were also the members who had been freed from Grand Tesoro. Tesoro just started to leave after receiving instructions about the next steps beyond what Luffy had said, as their meeting lasted an hour. Tesoro and most of his members left the improvised King Riku's room, while a woman remained. Baccarat. Luffy murmured. I wanted to talk a bit. She commented. Luffy just sighed. We can do that in the next few days. I'll be busy today and need to go to Paradise by the end of the day. Luffy said, since the woman in front of him clearly wanted to be with him. All right. Seems like luck isn't on my side after all. She murmured. We'll have time for that, Baccarat, so wait a bit longer, Luffy said. She simply began to leave as Perona, Baby 5, and Domino approached, entering the place. Did you become a king or something? Perona asked in her usual mocking tone, while looking at Luffy sitting on Dressrosa's throne. I'm a Yonko, I'm above any king of my territories, Luffy retorted. Anyway, master. Are you cheating on me? Baby 5 exclaimed with her childish behavior. Stop it, you're my only maid, so no. Luffy replied, already knowing she was referring to Viola. Anyway. I want to give you some instructions. Luffy began. After a while, they left, and Luffy stayed there for a while before going to speak to the prisoners of Sugar in Grand Tesoro. The next group was the one he had been waiting for the most, Zoe's group, with Alvida, Jinbei, Frankie, Beppo, Pedro, and Carrot. Captain. Beppo greeted him while Frankie appeared with a wide smile, Jinbei with a serious look, and Pedro and Carrot a bit cautious behind. But the person at the front quickly advanced toward Luffy before jumping into his lap. Husband. Alvida said, thrown onto him. Hello, how was the trip? Luffy asked. Very well, but I missed you. She commented with a mischievous smile. Maybe later? Luffy suggested, moving her aside, as he had to receive his other companions. Alvida stayed next to the throne. I see you came, Pedro, and even you, Carrot. Luffy commented while they both looked a bit surprised. You called me, asked why among the entire mink tribe, after all, I don't remember meeting before. Pedro spoke cautiously, knowing Luffy was the captain of that monster who defeated the entire mink tribe alone.
He knows my name?
Carrot asked, surprised, although they could have mentioned it over the Den Den Mushi when they called.
No, we've never met, but I have my secrets, and I'm interested in you. But we'll talk about that later.
First, I want to know the mink's position, besides what we discussed over the communicator.
Luffy started.
They agreed to join your fleet temporarily, wanting to see how the Wano battle will play out.
Jinbei stepped forward. I knew it would be tough, but this is good. Let's focus on this fight and see the position of the two leaders later.
You left the communicator in Zou, right? He asked.
Yes, Captain, Frankie replied, referring to a communicator he had designed to be untraceable and impossible to intercept. Great, I'll contact them as soon as we organize things here.
Anyway, Beepo, you're coming with me to claim the islands in Paradise.
Luffy said.
Yes. Beepo exclaimed, fully aware of it beforehand.
Now let's talk business. Pedro, you stay, and everyone else can do what you want. You're free, and I'm sure Dressrosa will be partying tonight, so have a good banquet, Luffy said. Is husband already leaving? Alvida murmured. For a few days.
It was the second woman Luffy had to explain the situation of his absence to.
I'll be waiting for the captain then. Beepo said, knowing he would leave this kingdom tonight.
Just let the samurai who came with you know that I want to speak with him, so call him, and I'll see him after Pedro.
Luffy informed.
With that, everyone left the room, leaving only Luffy and Pedro in front of him. The latter still seemed lost.
I'll be straight with you, Pedro. I want you in my crew. Luffy began. The human woman mentioned that. I wonder why. I only saw monsters among you. I don't think I'm on the same level. Pedro commented. It's still too early for you to believe you won't get stronger. We'll have plenty of opportunities for that. Luffy said calmly. The current strength of his crewmates was never an issue. What he wanted was the potential each possessed. Pedro never showed signs of becoming very strong in the anime before his death. But Luffy believed he could at least reach the level of Master of the Day and Master of the Night if well nurtured. You don't need to decide now, but I'm sure the minks will be with me soon. You could become someone powerful in our adventures through the new world. I just have a knack for seeing character, and let's say I knew the skies a long time ago, so I believe you'll be a great addition to the main team. Luffy said. Pedro might be the last addition to the main force, completing his crew. I'll think about it. In the end, Pedro murmured without giving a direct answer, a bit indecisive. He didn't know Luffy, and simply being asked to join his crew seemed too much. Not that Luffy would be offended by it, he understood perfectly but knew that the man would accept in the end. All right. The minks will already be at war against Kaido and Big Mom, so we'll be heading to Wano together, but it will still take some time. You can give me your answer until then. For now, I'd like to strengthen you once the islands are here. After all, I have training grounds where my new members can go through a small training session next month. Luffy said before giving a smile. I'd like you and Carrot to participate in that as well. It will be quite useful to increase your strength and get used to the rumble balls from my Dr. Chopper. Luffy said. All right. Pedro murmured in the end. You can go, enjoy Dressrosa, and please call that samurai, Luffy requested. Pedro nodded and began to leave, closing the throne room door, which opened again shortly after. A man with a shaved head on top and a topknot entered, wearing feudal Japan clothing and carrying a katana, a samurai from Wano. He entered cautiously, looking at Luffy sitting on the throne, staring at him. What a presence! I feel like I'm suffocating. The man murmured, somewhat fearful of being in the presence of someone as strong as Kaido, while they were alone, making the monster in front of him give his full attention to him. So you work with Shitenmaru, or should I say, Ashura Doji, one of the red scabbards. Luffy spoke calmly, making the man stand a bit straighter. You know my master's true name and identity. The man murmured. What's your name?
Luffy asked, and the man, now being asked his name for the first time, was surprised. A cab, Lord Luffy, he murmured carefully. Tell me, a cab, how are things in Wano? Luffy asked. They are miserable, there's a lack of food, drinking water, and Kaido has ordered everyone in Wano to start gathering all the food due to the war he's going to wage against you. The situation is getting difficult, and we can't predict how many will start dying during this time. He spoke in a somber tone. That's bad. Luffy murmured, knowing the consequences this fight would have for Wano and how Kaido would increase the pressure on the entire country. He would have to do something before his future people starved. Well, I'll have to solve that, but I'll do it later. Don't worry. Wano won't be left behind, and we'll help it. Luffy replied in a serious tone, while the man nodded, hoping that he would indeed help. And I want to know what kind of allies we can find in Wano. After all, aren't you waiting for Odin's son to return in a year? Luffy asked, leaving a cab shocked. You know, about that, he murmured, more fearful than before. It seemed this man knew all the secrets of the world. You could say I know many things, but unfortunately, this world still hides many secrets beyond my reach. Either way, I need to know if I can count on Wano or not. After all, Kaido will fall now, not in a year with Momonosuke's return, Luffy said firmly. The man was growing more and more bewildered listening to Luffy, but Luffy's confidence made him believe he really would take down Kaido now, not as Kazuki Toki had predicted. I don't believe that everyone in Wano who believes in the return of Odin's heir thinks Kaido will fall now, but my master and a few others are starting to trust in your victory. So you'll certainly find allies when you go to Wano. But also, with the people being pressured like never before, I believe many others will bet their hopes on you, in the midst of despair, he said, and Luffy found that reasonable. I wonder about Kazuki Hiyori's stance. Luffy asked himself softly, knowing the woman trusted her mother's prophecy more than his victory now. His gaze returned to the man. That's good. We'll defeat Kaido, and I don't want to seem like just another dictator. It won't be a secret that I'll make Wano my territory, but don't compare me to Kaido. I intend to open its borders to the world. My companion and wife is Kaido's daughter, but she loves Wano deeply, so I'm sure we'll make it a better place, Luffy replied. About the Kazuki family. The man suddenly spoke, cautious with his words. Despite Luffy's position and speaking calmly, it was hard to trust someone who would make Wano their territory after what Kaido had done. His fear was for the Kazuki family, which, despite being somewhat mocked because Wano was in this state, was still the sovereign family of that land. I won't interfere with the internal power of the Kazuki, but they will have to follow some rules for Wano. Don't worry, Wano, with happy people, their needs met, and a powerful army of samurai, is much more useful to me than the current state of the country. So I ask that you trust my words. After all, I don't go back on my promises. We will bring prosperity to that country as soon as we defeat Kaido and Big Mom, Luffy declared with a smile. The man just looked at him for a while, storing all his words as he nodded. Anyway, you can go. Feel free in Dressrosa and find a place to stay. We'll start taking care of Wano as soon as I return and settle everything with the rest of my crew. Luffy began to rise from the throne. Now it's time to leave with Bippo. I'll be back soon, he said, starting to leave the throne as the man stood there, thinking about everything he'd heard. Chapter 420, Return to Skypiea. Third-person POV. New word. Shall we go, Captain? Bippo asked while standing with the rest of the crew in the square amidst the streets, enjoying a grand banquet. Of course, I want to see my kids and sleep with them tonight. Luffy replied and grabbed Bippo in the next moment. Bippo only let out a surprised scream as Luffy grabbed him by the paw and soared into the sky under everyone's gaze. Luffy was much faster than Bippo as he created his wings in the sky, with Baby 5 shouting for him, but he ignored her and was preparing to accelerate at full speed toward paradise. However, his eyes shifted to the side a moment later as he sensed a ship approaching Dressrosa. Luffy raised an eyebrow as he looked at the ship. On the ship, someone was also looking intently at the sky over Dressrosa, as both Luffy's and this person's eyes tried to meet, but they couldn't see anything beyond the hockey in each other's presence.
Is something wrong, Seibo-kun? Koala approached, noticing him looking upwards.
Just someone I've been wanting to meet for a long time. It seems he's about to do something outside of Dressrosa, as it looks like he's leaving, but I'm happy to see him there.
Seibo smiled. Seibo. Luffy smiled in the sky as well.
You're here, brother. But I can't stay to greet you. After all, I can do that when I return, and I must see my little ones. He spoke in a calm tone before turning in the direction indicated by Hancock's Vivre card.
Captain. Aha.
Beepo barely had time to think while suspended before Luffy shot forward, his speed increasing rapidly. Seibo only saw a rocket with a small purple glow appear in the dark sky and rush away at full speed, soon out of sight.
Well. I hope he returns soon. Seibo commented, watching Luffy disappear, realizing their meeting would have to wait a little longer.
Koala asked who it was, and Seibo just smiled as the ship reached Dressrosa, the city illuminated with a celebration taking place at that moment. The guards quickly went to investigate the mysterious ship, with Jinbei among them.
You're revolutionaries. What is the second commander of the Revolutionary Army doing here?
Jinbei asked, looking at them, as Viola had announced their arrival as the ship neared the kingdom, revealing their identities. There was even a fishman among the revolutionary group whom Jinbei recognized from the island many years ago, but his eyes were fixed on Seibo. Allow me to introduce myself, I am Seibo, but aside from being a commander of the Revolutionary Army,
I am also Luffy's brother.
I'm here to see him and Lucy as well, although I just saw him leave the island a short while ago. He spoke politely. Jinbei maintained a serious look before finally breaking into a smile. It's great that you're here then, Luffy mentioned you.
Jinbei spoke much more amiably now.
It was clear that Luffy had already talked about his brother, in addition to the fact that the Revolutionary Army was a possible ally of the Straw Hats, considering Luffy's biological father controlled the entire military force fighting against the government.
Well, this is what I call a warm welcome. Seibo smiled even wider.
So, dear companions of Luffy's brother,
you may join us, come along with the others. As for Luffy, he went to fetch some islands and will be back with them. Jinbei said, turning around.
Seibo was a bit confused by the term fetching islands, while Koala, the fishman, and all the soldiers who had arrived on the hidden ship started following Jinbei to the heart of the celebration.
Hours passed as Seibo began mingling with the Straw Hats.
Meanwhile, in the New World, on one of the islands that continuously floated in the sky and was part of the New Skypiea, Boa Hancock was in her palace, on the balcony of her room, gazing at the sky, with a Den Mushi by her side, waiting for a call from Luffy. He had spoken to her over the past days and weeks, but she always remained attentive to any call from her husband, hoping that he was already ready to take them, as it had been a month and a half since they had left. Meanwhile, outside the bedroom balcony, inside Hancock's room with her giant bed, there was a mess, even though it was still early in the morning, as the children played with one another. All of Luffy's children had been under Hancock's care ever since he and the others returned to the sea. She maintained an open dissatisfaction with the other women Luffy was also married to, even though she couldn't do anything about it. In the end, she had to accept that her husband had a large harem and wasn't satisfied with just the most beautiful woman in the world. However, whenever she looked at each of the children, she couldn't help but fall in love as she noticed Luffy's traits in each of them, especially in her daughters, which made her truly love all the children as if they were her own. The children loved her too, and they didn't cry constantly after their biological mothers or their father, despite her strange faces and postures, like when she pointed her finger, turned her head upward with an arrogant display. The children adored it when she did that. She continued to gaze at the stars that night, hearing the sound of the children behind her, and sighed. I guess Luffy won't call today. I should put them to bed. Hancock said. It was then that she heard a loud noise, and when she turned around, she saw Nymeria, Robin's daughter, who was only crawling, opening one of her bedside drawers and knocking everything onto the floor, while picking up one of her undergarments and storing it there, seemingly trying to understand what it was. Hey! What are you doing, little one? Hancock muttered, walking heavily into the room as the girl looked at her and started giggling like the baby she was, tossing the underwear into the air. Drop that right now, young lady. Or else, I'll put you in time out. Hancock exclaimed, pointing her finger, raising her head, and arching her back into her usual pose. All the children looked at her at that moment. A moment later, Luna, Aurora, Sinbad, Lumen, and Nymeria began clapping, mostly inaudibly due to their age and lack of strength, finding it funny, while each of them exclaimed in their own way, "Mommy is so funny." Aurora exclaimed, still fumbling with the words she was learning, "No, you little brats." She spoke again, making a funny face with white eyes as a joke for the children, while they continued clapping, amused. Hancock then changed her eyes to heart-shaped as she watched the scene for a while longer, unable to resist the overwhelming cuteness. "You're all so adorable," she said, picking up Simba in a hug, as he was the closest to her, completely changing her posture as she rubbed the boy against her cheek. Next to the room, her sisters, Gloriosa, were listening to everything through the door, just sighing at the pirate empress's antics with Luffy's children. Since it was a common occurrence for her to act this way, Hancock began playing with everyone, picking up each one while the last, Nymeria, looked at her enormous breasts. "What do you want? Nurse again?" she asked, complaining, but despite her dissatisfied expression, she wouldn't deny her milk to the newborns. All of this was still being heard by the women, who feared that Hancock might not be careful with the children, even though she surprised them with how well she took care of them. "Well, we'll just have to let her take care of the children, despite her unique way of doing so," Gloriosa murmured, while her sisters nodded in agreement. And it was at that moment that something happened, with Gloriosa stopping as she looked up at the sky from the open balcony of that hallway. The most powerful users of observation haki on the surrounding islands near Skypiea also sensed it. Even some more developed animals, with haki, noticed something approaching at high speed. Hancock immediately rushed out to the balcony, looking joyfully before gently placing Nymeria in her bed so she wouldn't get hurt. "Luyuyuafififai," she exclaimed as Luffy threw Beepo from a nearby island and headed toward Amazon Lily. "Captain! Help!" Beepo shouted, asking for help, but Luffy ignored him, knowing he would be fine. Luffy quickly caught the attention of the children as, in the next moment, he landed on the balcony with all the kids staring at him, while he folded his wings with a happy smile on his face for being there. Hancock didn't hesitate for a second before jumping on him, grabbing him, and sealing the contact with a passionate kiss. "Luffy, you've kept your wife waiting for too long," she complained immediately as soon as she pulled away from his lips, and Luffy smiled. "Well, I'm here now." "And what's this?" "Is it for me?" he asked, noticing Hancock's exposed breasts. "You fool, that's for feeding our children," she murmured. "Anyway, let's go see my kids," Luffy said as the children looked at him with shining eyes, even the newborns recognizing him when they saw him. "Daddy's here." Luna, the eldest of the twins and consequently of all Luffy's children, said as Luna and Aurora ran toward him, shouting, "Daddy, Daddy!" The next scene was him picking them up in his arms, giving a fatherly hug to his precious daughters, who clung to him, exclaiming for their father. Luffy began kissing each one's forehead and picked up Sinbad, who was already climbing his legs after crawling from the bed. "How are you all? I hope you didn't miss Daddy too much," he said, maintaining the most sincere smile he could give. "Yes, we did, Daddy," Aurora said, pouting. "You took too long. When you said you were going to see, you promised to come back soon," Luna murmured, also pouting, dissatisfied with Luffy's absence. "Don't worry. Now I'm here, and everything will be more peaceful for a while Daddy will be with you every day," Luffy said as Sinbad tried to stretch his cheek, while he moved closer to his other three children from his other wives, Robin and Yamato. "Are we going to the New World?" one of the daughters asked, curious, her eyes sparkling, while the other children asked inaudible questions with curious eyes. "Yes, soon we'll go to the New World. Starting tomorrow, I'll prepare everything for us to leave," Luffy replied. "That's great. I couldn't stand being away from you any longer," Hancock said, approaching Luffy, surrounded by children, in a passionate tone, wanting to join them. After all, her dream of having a family was right there. "Of course, my love," Luffy responded, giving her a kiss. However, they were interrupted by someone approaching. It was Makita, jumping onto the balcony. "How could you leave your pregnant wife behind?" she immediately complained, accusing Luffy. "Hey, what are you doing here? You weren't supposed to come in now. Hancock exclaimed, pointing at Makino angrily. I'm also his wife, and I'm still pregnant. Be a good husband and treat me well as the future mother of your children. Kaya, she complained, laughing her evil laugh that had nothing to do with the situation. Luffy just sighed as the argument between the two women began. Despite Hancock being stronger physically, Makita was still fierce in her attitude toward the pirate empress. In the end, Luffy was stuck between the two women fighting, and he separated them before going to sleep, without doing anything obscene, as he only wanted to be with his children that night in peaceful slumber. The next morning, the bed was surrounded by children sleeping on all sides. The two women had calmed down, with Luffy in the middle, having to lecture them not to fight in front of the children, while he said he would sleep with both of them. Luffy woke up to find even Simba, lying on his back, sprawled over his belly, while he gently stroked his head. His twin daughters slept peacefully, one on his head and the other using his arms as pillows, and two babies were on his legs. The scene reminded Luffy of his grandfather Garp sleeping during his childhood, when he and his brothers would cling to Garp's body on all sides in Dayton's house while they slept. That wraps up this part of What If There Was a Different Luffy. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Just a quick reminder, the story What If Ichigo Had a Different Zanpakuto is now on hold as we have caught up with the author. So once again, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what the next project should be here on the channel. I'm currently considering these 3 fanfics. What if sign-in system in High School DxD? What if Ichigo awoke his true powers? What if Mangaka in One Piece world? Let me know which one you'd like to see next by voting in the poll. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.